Well, Jay, and welcome to the Gates podcast. I was just saying, I was born for this. Because we're just always coming at you guys live and raw, as always. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge all the forces in the non-material, all the ancestors that are standing behind this great work, all the powers of nature that are standing behind this great work, particularly Nabnabala Musa Moradinabig for his sacrifice and all the work he put in order to open up the doors into the culture for so many people, into the Kemetic culture, into the Kemetic mystery schools and the Kemetic temples again. So, you know, I don't know if it's really clear sometimes why we do that before we open the show, because we really take the time to understand, you know, how we are a manifestation of the non-material. So that means we have to take the time to acknowledge the forces in the non-material. That means we really have to take the time to say, hey, you know, how we're able to make things happen is because of what's in the non-material, because of the things that are standing behind us, not because, you know, it's cool to talk about the ancestors, but because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the ancestors. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the forces of nature in the invisible supporting us and allowing us to, you know, to be here, setting the stage for us to be here. You know, we're going to bring you a show tonight where we're going to continue on that theme that we were talking about the last few couple of podcasts. where we've been talking about health. And we have Tiasta here with us today. Tiasta is not only a Dogon initiate, she's an initiate of the New Jersey temples. She's an initiate of the Dogon temples. And also Tiasta is a psychologist. So we wanted to kind of bring someone that's really, you know, understanding and of the world as we know it, that a lot of people are accustomed to, and the world that a lot of people find themselves seeking help from, because I know nowadays it's a very kind of you know, like it's a hip thing to be in therapy. Like I know that there's that running joke, like men will make a movie instead of going to therapy, or men will do this instead of going to therapy. Sorry, you were muted. What did you say?
I said, because that's what men do.
Well, yeah, you know, as they say. But nonetheless, my name is Tipsa Mahekwan Amir. I am your host of the Gated Gates podcast, and I'm here with
Kajazrim and Kebtah, your co-host.
And Tiasta Mahekwan.
You see, she's already in like
the professional
psychologist
today.
mode. Like the way she said that was very much like a psychologist.
I am Tiasta.
Yeah, Dr. Cuskley. But yeah, man, you know, mental health is a big topic, and it's a big topic because there's a lot of people out there that are suffering from, you know, mental health or lack of mental health, as they like to call it. So we really wanted to delve into it and really kind of talk about it and really, you know, dig in, because there's a lot of people out there that have real problems, real things that they're dealing with, and they're taking real drugs and real time in order to cope. And, you know, big pharma is there cutting checks, and people, you know, prescribe what they prescribe, and people take what they can. So we'll just hop right into it. But before we do that, can you kind of break down what it's like and what the training of a psychologist is, and how they kind of prepare you, and like what you're trained to do and how you're trained to approach things?
Okay. Jai, everyone. I didn't really know why I was getting pulled on the show today, so
Now you do.
this is interesting.
Please don't hold back.
Yeah,
No,
don't hold
I'm
back
in
at all.
a truth-minded mood today, so you caught me in a good space.
That's good.
So I was trained in school/clinical psychology, meaning a lot of my training was with children to begin with, which is a really interesting perspective that I bring to the table in terms of the educational system, in terms of how the indoctrination of the educational system even extends into mental health spaces. You know, a lot of my training was around disorders, right? So the whole MO of psychology is to put people in boxes, because the end goal is to differentiate normal from non-normal functioning, right?
Okay.
So when I was trained to diagnose several disorders, especially in children. I was trained to diagnose ADHD, attention deficit disorder. I was trained to diagnose learning disabilities, trained to diagnose autism. From an adult perspective and a child perspective, I was trained to diagnose anxiety and depression, mood disorders, bipolar, personality disorders, all of which supposedly deviate from the normal spectrum of human behavior.
Okay, so wait, because I think we're going into a lot of stuff. So I just want to kind of pause for a second. And so when you say that you have the ability to diagnose, that means you have the ability to do what?
I have the ability to look inside of a book, a large book, that has a lot of different words in it, that says that this person fits this criteria, this person fits this criteria because they tell me that they do,
So,
either by self-report or by observation.
so
And then I get to put them into that box via my clinical expertise and my degree.
So then what is dictating the actual process of them determining what is natural or normal?
That's a good question, Kajajariman. There's a there's a panel of experts that's put together every, gosh, I might mess this up. I don't know, every 10 years, every so often a new DSM, a new big book comes out.
DSM, you have to break down what that is.
DSM-5 is the diagnostic manual that I go by as a psychologist to diagnose.
So it's not like there's a set thing or set standard, but it changes every 10 years, basically.
Yeah, I may be messing up the timeline of that, but yeah, it changes periodically. Like the next iteration of that will be the DSM-6. We're in the DSM-5.
So how often does it come out?
I don't know. Yeah, I have to Google that.
So what you're basically saying is you can have a condition and you can have basically a terminology for the condition, and you can have a step to diagnose that condition, but then that's based upon what era we're in, based upon every 10 years or whatever, whenever.
Because at some point in time, some disorders disappeared from the DSM. So at some point in time, like homosexuality was deemed as a disorder.
Right.
But then at some point, because of popular opinion or the social norms changing, that got dropped as a disorder. Does that make sense?
See, that makes a lot of sense. That makes so much sense. So then that means everybody essentially can become or have these disorders, but because the social norms or what's socially acceptable, depending on whatever time we're in, that can all change and it can be okay.
And if you actually look at the range of human behavior and human emotion and human expression, like we have all fit into one of those disorders at one point in time, guaranteed.
So then how is it that someone is put into a box to then be suffering from a disorder? Is it due to their lack of adjustment or lack of functionality? Because if it's more so about that at any given point in time anyone can fit into those boxes, then how is it that you deem the severity of said disorder?
Yeah, it goes by functionality level. Like, you have to meet certain criteria for a certain amount of time for certain disorders. But now the interesting thing is there's boxes like, anxiety disorder unspecified. So that could be like someone has like one symptom, two symptoms, and you could just put the label on them. It's, it's labels. Right? I've never subscribed, even early in my training, even before I found initiation, I never subscribed to the diagnostic model. It never made sense to me that someone could be just put into some box that would define them for the rest of their lives, right? Because a lot of these things, the medical industry and the mental health industry, is like, these are like lifelong disorders oftentimes that people get slapped with. And then in the psychiatry route, which I'm not involved in, I've never prescribed medication and never have backed that as a viable option or route to cure or fix. But then you get slapped with a lifelong label, and then you get to be put on medication for life as
So
well.
somebody will come to you and
Wait. Just one. Can you tell us the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist for those?
that was my question.
Yeah, a psychiatrist goes through medical school, medical training. So technically they're an MD, or, can be called a medical doctor, but they go down the psychiatry specialty, which is like a mental health specialty, and they get to prescribe medication.
Okay.
My training was never through a medical school. So my training is, for a psychologist, it's either a PhD or a PsyD. So it's a doctorate in psychology, which is training you to work with people in terms of behaviors, emotions, symptoms through talk therapy, behavior therapy, cognitive therapy to adjust their way of thinking or behaving rather than giving them medication.
So it's a high-paid life coach.
Yeah, I guess you could say. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I've been in this industry for a while, God disagreement, and I have seen really good life coaches. I've seen some excellent life coaches who just they're like tuned in. You can tell that their spirit is healing spirit, and they can work with you. They can bring change to your life. But then I've seen psychologists who are brilliant at what they do, and I've seen psychologists who are terrible at what they do. I've seen psychologists who shouldn't be put in front of a person to save their life, to even be giving them any sort of life advice. That they're just literally, they read something in a book and they're spewing it from their mouth. Like the problem with the modern system is that anyone, if you have a bit of smarts, book smarts, you can get yourself into a college, you can get yourself a degree, and then you can get yourself into a profession. But is that what your spirit, your bloodline, everything is, guiding you to do? Is that what you're actually meant to do?
So, I know that you're talking about some things that maybe are going over a lot of people's heads right now, but we just want to kind of rewind a little bit because before Kanja's even attributed being a psychologist to being a very high-paid life coach. So, what are some of the differences between even going to a medical school versus just going to a university and receiving a PsyD and then you said like a PhD?
Yeah. Medical school, I haven't been to medical school, so I don't know. But from what I know, they talk more about the human body. You get anatomy classes. You go through all of the medical training that a medical doctor would go through. Understanding whatever the modern system tells you about the body. Like, you get that training. Plus, you get training on the brain. You also get that in psychology classes. You get training on the brain and the structures of the brain and how the brain works. Like, I almost went into neuropsychology. I was literally going down that road where I'm like, I just want to be like super high paid and just like assess people or children in terms of like testing them for certain very rare or like specific disorders through their brain functioning. So like
strictly the physical functionality of the brain.
Yeah, and highly structured different kinds of tests that you can test, like memory, executive functioning, you can test processing speed, you can test reasoning abilities and IQ and all of that, and you can put all those numbers together. It's like a numbers game. You put all those numbers together and then you get a diagnosis.
So it's like trying to add like data.
Yeah.
And then from the data, you basically put them in that category,
You put
that
them
box.
in a box. And then from that box, they get services in school. So they get specialized services. Maybe they get extra time on tests. Maybe they get a special classroom. Maybe they get a special tutor. Maybe they get all the things in the public education system that like gives them whatever that treatment is. And then, or they get maybe specialized programs like autism programs. You can funnel kids into, it's a whole system now. There's a whole system now built on children with disabilities and also adults with mental disorders as well.
So real quick, I just want to ask this one question. So you're not on the medical side of it, but has someone ever come to you where you maybe look at them and say, okay, I diagnosed them for this and I can't deal with this. So you send them to the person who administers basically the medication, right?
Sure. Yeah, there are certain, in my training, there would be times where it would be, okay, I'm a psychologist, so my level of training will only go so far. I won't, if a kid has ADHD, especially when you're working within a school system, the next thing the school system will want you to do is get the kid medicated. So the next thing you are trained to do and are supposed to do is send them to a psychiatrist to get medication.
You know where I'm
there's
from?
Like ordinances, like you're supposed to And that's based on, how do you know that the school wants the child to get medicated? Like, how does that communication come
How do
to
I?
a psychologist? Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the done thing.
I think that I assume the psychologist would be the one to reach out to the school and tell them
Yeah.
that the child needs this.
Yeah. Like in our training, everything about our training, every time we came across that disorder was like the best thing for the child is to get medication and to get some sort of therapy together in conjunction.
So that's what the school suggests.
Mm-hmm.
The school will suggest to you upon your diagnosis.
No, I mean, as the expert in the school, like if I was the expert, I never had one of those jobs. I only had like
Oh, so you mean like if you were stationed within the capacity of a school, then they would then utilize you to then diagnose the children within the school.
Yeah, and then as a professional within the school, it would be up to me to recommend that the child get further services, as in including a psychiatric evaluation.
You know, this is interesting to me, and I'm going to tell you why, because it's kind of a little bit personal for me. The thing is, what if the child is, because children are very funny sometimes. Children will, once they know they can get their way, they will continue to do something to get their way. And, right, in school, right, when I came to America, first of all, let me say this. Caribbean people, African people, we don't believe in ADHD. Like, you tell us that, we're looking at you like you're crazy. Like, that's, the child is just hyper. So when I was in elementary, I had a specific counselor, like a psychiatrist, whatever. And now that you're saying what you're saying, I'm understanding that's what his role was. So they tried to label me as hyper and like destructive, and like I didn't listen. But really, I just didn't like authority. And I didn't want to be in the class because to me the work was boring and it was easy. So I would just cause disruptions, and I would want to fight and like just throw things and whatever, right? So they gave me this counselor. So there would be specific points in the day, like throughout the week, where I would have to go into the room with him. It would just be me and him, and we'll sit there. He'll talk about my feelings and what I want and like what my goals are and like why do I get angry with this, why I get angry with that, and blah blah blah. And we'd sit down and we literally play checkers. And
The guy, you and the guy?
yeah,
He would just ask you questions and you would play checkers?
yeah. Like questions about myself, about like what's going on at home.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Me, right, as that child, like me remembering this is like, I'm getting a free pass out of class. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I was put there in the first place.
You were even understanding, and then you were understanding how to manipulate the situation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And here you are, I'm here with this guy. He's talking to me about my feelings. He's talking to me about like why I'm angry with this stuff. I'm pretty much kind of like telling him stuff because I realize I like being there. I'd rather be there and play checkers and chess and talk about Star Wars and anime with this guy than be in math class.
Exactly.
So what if the kids are all just trying to manipulate things? I don't know. I'm not saying that all kids do this, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
But like all kids are different. So
Yeah.
how can you have a standard for every single child?
Exactly. That's some of the kids for sure. That's some of the kids that I came across. Definitely, you can tell they're just they're smart. They're manipulating the system. And don't get me wrong. I don't want to bash the whole profession of psychology. There's a lot of good people in that field, who well-meaning people who really just want to help kids and adults and all that. But the thing is that, like what you're saying, is that there are kids caught in that labeling cycle, or like funneling system of disorders that really have no business being classified in that way, because maybe what they're actually displaying is something that's like a talent or an ability or a predisposition or something that they're really meant to use in a different way, but the system will never support that, because the system only supports obedience to the classroom. The system only supports obedience to its rules. So if a kid shows itself to step outside of that box, then they may very well find themselves being labeled as something. Whereas it's not about labeling in terms of whatever the modern system thinks is a disorder, but it's like, what is that kid's spirit coming with? Why are they manifesting in that way in the classroom? Why are they hyper? Why are they running around not listening to authority? Maybe there's something to look at there rather than just labeling them as somehow outside of the box of normal. You know?
Well, can you talk more about kind of like the approach of psychology
Mm-hmm.
toward these so-called disorders?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're telling us about this stuff as someone that's in it that now has a different kind of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So then what is it about the approach specifically from psychology? If you were to divorce yourself or remove yourself from a different kind of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
how would that approach work?
Disorder-wise, you're saying?
Yeah, just someone's in front of you with a disorder.
Okay.
And then is it just like, okay, you self-report
Okay.
or I observe?
So if I'm just literally thinking my psychology hat is on.
Yeah, psychology, that's it.
Someone comes into my office and displaying a certain number of symptoms or complaints. It could be strictly on self-report that you could give a diagnosis.
Self-report?
Self-report meaning that the client says, I'm experiencing
Okay.
lack of sleep, I'm experiencing a loss of appetite, I'm experiencing crying spells, whatever, you know. Now, a good psychologist, if you're actually a thinking person, you know that self-report is not always reliable, right? You know that, and we learn that here in the initiation, right? You don't always trust what your client says, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're actually being a good clinician, there's certain tests you can give. It's also self-report of symptoms, but you can, they have certain questions which can detect lying, can detect malingering, they call it, which is like upplaying your symptoms for a certain specific reason. So there are specific psychology tests which do allow you to do that.
How do those tests work?
It's like multiple choice. It's like self-report still.
So you make the person take a multiple choice test?
Basically, yes, but
An
there are
assessment,
certain, an
basically.
assessment. Yeah, there are certain questions that detect whether you're lying.
Are you a psychologist? You're like, it's an assessment.
Well, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I wanted to be.
Oh, you want to be a
The
psychologist?
1 week I went to college, that was the class I stayed in the most.
You went to college for 1 week?
For 1 week.
And-
Well, it was like the first week?
Yeah, the first week.
The other way you might,
Thank you, Conscious Raymond. Let's let the psychologist continue.
the other way you might diagnose is observation. Like you would go into a real life scenario. This doesn't really work with adults. You're not going to like follow them around their house and be like, how much are you sleeping? How much are you eating? Right. So a lot of times with adults, you're just going on self-report. But for children, you can go into a classroom and you can observe their behavior, their speech, their patterns, and then you can diagnose based on observation as well. But remember, with mental health, there's no blood tests, right? There's no, like the medical institutions, the medical doctors like to rely on those, physical markers of disease, right? But in psychology and mental health, they're trying to figure out physical markers by mapping out the brain and scanning the brain for like different activity in different lobes of the brain to say, okay, this kid has ADHD, this kid has this. But it's not always a one-to-one correlation. It doesn't always, people's brain patterns don't always match up, right? Because people are unique individuals. But they're trying to find those patterns. But mainly with psychology, you don't have a blood test. It's based on behavior, self-report, observation. That's all you have to go on to diagnose.
So then you technically are completely reliant upon the perspective of the said psychologist.
Or the client themselves, yeah.
So then how does the field of psychology come to some sort of common ground? Like, how is it that you guys then have some semblance of direction?
In terms of what is a disorder?
In terms of just in general, because it sounds like it's completely just like, hey, how's it going for you over there? Oh, it's going like this. Well, how's it going for you over there?
Well, yeah, it's like, I mean, they have to report a certain list of symptoms. Like, I've not been sleeping for this amount of time. Like, you know, for 4 months at a time, I haven't been sleeping. I haven't been able to eat. You know, I've been staying in bed all day. I'm lacking motivation. I can't function. And then, you know, you can give them a diagnosis based on that.
But wouldn't that all just be how somebody is technically feeling? Is that cause for really diagnosing them with an actual like problem? Like, what if they're just their own problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you guys are starting to realize is the flimsy nature of what everything is standing on, right? Because humans, this is why I'm trying to say we can all fit into these boxes at one point or another. Like, humans were very emotional beings, right? We have emotions that manifest in different ways, whether at times we felt sad or we felt angry or our behavior's gone out of whack, right? Or we get repetitive thoughts, right? Or we speak to someone the wrong way, right? And what psychology has done, going back all the way back to Freudian days, right, is it's taken a spectrum of human behavior and human emotion and turned it into a label, like a box, right? That now you can get services and you can get a diagnosis and you can get certain things within the system that recognizes that box that you put yourself in or that somebody else put you in.
So are you saying that they created a perfect system of monetary gain from human emotion?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, if you were looking at the psychiatry perspective, like the medication perspective, sure, there's little boxes for everything and you get medication for every little box. And then, I think psychology, the way it started, was a genuine wanting to understand human behavior and like where humans could go wrong, right? Like, because if you look at the original history of like Freudian psychology, like the original like people sitting on the couch and talking to a doctor, talking, like a lot of the original Freudian therapy is just like freestyle talking, anything that comes into your mind or out of your mouth. And that's supposed to represent your unconscious flow of thoughts.
So meaning like they attempted to access the subconscious of individuals through unfiltered speech.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like
And dreams.
And dreams.
Yes. Like a dream analysis was very big in the beginning of Freudian psychology.
Is that still practiced in that way?
If you're a psychoanalyst, if you're trained in that.
So
yes.
that's a whole nother field.
Yeah, and I wasn't trained specifically in that, but New York is still, like New York City still has a lot of psychoanalysts.
Yeah, I know because there's a acting teacher of mine that, rest in peace to Sam Schacht. He had gone off and started becoming a psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
And he would bring some of those things into the classes at times. And then that's when I realized, I'm like, so anyone can go and become a psychoanalyst.
Yes.
Like you can go live out your dreams of being a psychologist by going tomorrow and joining a psychoanalyst program in New York City.
Where do I sign up? I'm down.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm just trying to demystify it for people because I think anyone who's like a very well-meaning psychologist or healer or life coach or anyone in the mental health industry who actually wants to help people, I think should be demystifying this stuff. Because just to like have these boxes and to stand on these boxes and to be like, you're this and you're that and you have this and like we know and you don't know is just like a fallacy. Like, we have to understand there's a range of human behavior and there's a range of ways in which people overcome their obstacles within themselves and within life, right? And a lot of those do not include medication, right? And now the issue too we're seeing with children especially is now we're seeing like double the amount of children with disabilities show up in classrooms. Like all of a sudden where it would be a normal classroom of 30 kids, now you're seeing like 7 of those kids or 8 of those kids have IEPs and are classified with disabilities within
IDP, what's an IDP?
IEP is individualized education plan, meaning they've already within the classroom. They've already been classified. They've already been given a box. They've already been given a diagnosis, and now they get specialized services because of that diagnosis.
Why don't they have special ed classes anymore where they just take those kids and put them in a separate room together?
Yeah, they still have those, but now there's so many kids in the public education system who now have diagnoses that now the special education classrooms don't even cut it.
This is interesting because I knew kids who were in special ed and they were diagnosed with those things, but again, to me it comes back to like kids manipulating the situation, because I've seen some of these people grow up and 2 out of the 5 guys in my old school that I knew was in that class, like they're huge scammers now. So I'm like, there's no way you had some disorder in school and now you're one of the most, because you got to be very intelligent to be scamming people on the level they're scamming people. Very intelligent. I mean, they're scamming millions.
Stop dry snitching, man.
I didn't say any names. I'm just saying, like, you got to be very intelligent. So obviously there's nothing wrong with you mentally.
But hold on. So then before we kind of go too far off of your intelligent scamming friends, what about the kids that like have genuine emotional problems, like genuine issues adjusting, can't control their emotions, can't can't control themselves, have like real issues, real problems?
I mean,
what now?
No, it's a real issue, and I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen kids have meltdowns. I had one girl try to staple my face.
Wow.
I've seen kids throw things.
What did you do? Can you tell us that story?
I just stayed.
Like, would she try to staple your face? Were you like?
I just stayed very still and
non-reactive. Did you do like a judo move, or like what'd you do?
She obviously was trying to get my attention, so I just stayed very still, and was like, "Please put down the stapler."
In a very nice way.
And she eventually put down the stapler. Like, we had a standoff for a little bit. But because I gave no reaction, because, I mean, what's she really looking for? She's looking for a reaction. Intelligent kid, very intelligent kid, by the way, right? Not even a kid that I would look back on and be like, that's a effed up kid. That was just a very intelligent kid in a very unintelligent system. That's my assessment of that girl. But, it's like we had a standoff and, she put it down. But the point is that those sort of kids are everywhere now in the system. Everywhere. Like kids having meltdowns, kids not listening to their parents, kids throwing things in class, kids having crazy behavior. And you just have to wonder, like, why is this happening on such a mass scale that kids are having such emotional meltdowns? And I worked in an entire school, therapeutic school, where every single kid in the school was diagnosed with a mental disorder. And every single kid.
So every child there.
Every child there.
So it was like a mental disorder school?
Yes, it was a therapeutic school. So every kid had an IEP, an individualized education plan. Every kid had a therapist. Every kid had probably been kicked out of a public school or a private school or somehow.
A public school? The school?
No, it was a private school.
So then how does one gain access to this kind of school?
You have to have a diagnosis and you have to basically be in need of therapeutic services.
This is crazy. Because even before we started this, like, I really was like, well, what percentage of people in the modern day are actually, like, diagnosed with these problems and go to therapy? And I think it said almost, like, over 30% of the population in the United States.
Yeah. And that's the point that I was just finishing there is like to look at what is happening in society now for this level of this crisis. I would call it a mental health crisis to be happening. We can't look at the individuals within the crisis and say, well, you have this, you're doing this, you should take this, because that's what psychology and psychiatry is trying to do. It's like now, because it's such a growing epidemic, you have to look at the system within which that epidemic is growing, right? Because something as big as that, like people or kids just all of a sudden doubling the amount of disorders we're seeing in classrooms, doubling the amount of diagnoses of certain disorders we're seeing in classrooms, that doesn't make sense to my brain unless there's something wrong with the system that we're in. Like, it's not just all of a sudden we have, we're giving birth to more and more kids with ADHD, right? We're just, maybe in a system that's gone so far off the track, maybe we're miseducating kids one by one so that they're displaying certain emotional issues, right? Or we're placing kids in a system, kids with pure spirits in a system that will never support that pure spirit. And so they're rebelling, they're going crazy, they're not listening to adults, they're manifesting emotional symptoms because everything about that system is not actually supporting the spirit and who they actually are.
I think you said it in the beginning, actually, like what's truly going on, because I know for you, right, growing up, if you went to your dad and you started telling him, oh, Dad, I feel sad, I feel depressed, and yada, 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 yada. You know how it is nowadays.
Yeah, I don't think I ever did that.
But
now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I don't think I ever went.
It probably wouldn't even be a thought, right?
No.
But nowadays, like, even if you look at the music, because I remember this kid, rest in peace to this guy, XX.
XXXTentacion.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, if you listen to his music, it's all depressive.
Yeah,
it's
like
so
a diary.
depressive. Yeah, it's like, and it's so suicidal.
Yeah.
And I noticed because I had a younger friend who worked with me at this restaurant, and he would listen to him a lot. And we would have conversations, and our conversations would be about life. And, I would be talking to him about, like, I have a son, and, I have these bills and this and there's that. There's these things to take care of. And he didn't really have those same responsibilities, but at the same time, he had more of a life is hard for me right now kind of like mindset. And I remember talking to him, I'm like, why do you think like that? Because like you generally don't have any real responsibilities. Like you literally still live at home. Like there's nothing really hard on you.
You don't have any bills, bro.
You don't have any real bills. Like you spend all your money on weed, bro. I have to budget my weed money. You don't. Like you have weed for days. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I could see that like over years, there's kind of been, from when I grew up and like the older generations, there's been this mentality of like life is too hard and I need people and I need things to cater to how I'm feeling.
Yes.
And I think you said it earlier. You were like, the standard based upon what you're diagnosing people with changes every year, and it changes based upon how the standards that we are deeming as normal or natural in the society change.
Exactly.
So I think society as a whole has kind of given human beings this kind of like space to really like dive into how they feel and their emotions without giving them the proper education to educate them properly into life.
Exactly. I would say a lot of those kids in that therapeutic school, maybe not a lot, maybe not all, but some of those kids in that therapeutic school were just bratty kids. Literally. Just rich, bratty kids who came from an education and a household that didn't show them how to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, told them that they should get catered to, told them that they should get every opportunity opened to them, and that every emotional whim that they had should get catered to. Some of those kids. Now, some of those kids genuinely have been through some stuff, genuinely had a lot of issues to work through. But some you could just see were spoiled. right? And that's also an issue we're dealing with in modern society, where like, just like you're bringing up, is like, we're not educated to deal with our emotions on a real level, to say like, okay, if I'm feeling this thing, if I'm feeling this sadness, if I'm feeling this anger, how do I work with it and move past it and manage it, rather than indulging it, rather than saying like, oh, I deserve to be cared for in it, right? Because it's like we're catering to like emotional instability. And even the safe spaces movement is literally that, catering to emotional instability.
Safe space movement?
Yeah.
You've never heard of that?
No.
Like now in colleges and schools, it's like everyone should deserve a safe space where their emotions don't get hurt.
What?
Yeah. You haven't heard of
Yeah,
this?
it's
No.
like safe space, meaning like you won't have any opposition to what you're expressing emotionally.
Right.
But that's not real.
Yeah, but that's what a safe space is.
So like, let's say you're transitioning from female to male, or let's say you believe you're a cat. You should have a safe space to express that. You should have a safe space to be in that identity. That's like a movement.
Yeah, you've never heard of this? Like safe
No,
space?
bro. No.
Yeah. I remember when those signs first started popping up. I remember one time I was outside of a 7-Eleven, and this is like when I was in high school, and I think it was like midnight or something. I was in high school, and I was like driving home, and I stopped at a 7-Eleven to get something, and then I saw the sign, and it was a yellow sign, and it was like an adult holding like a child. It was like a yellow, like, you know, the yellow people that they put on signs. And then I'm like looking at it, and then I'm like, what does a safe space mean? And I'm there, and I think I sat outside of the 7-Eleven for like 10, 15 minutes and looked at the sign, and I was like, what is a safe space? Like, and I just was trying so hard to figure it out. But it makes so much sense, because I think the point you were trying to make earlier, in terms of asking me, like, you know, what would happen if I went to my dad and I started expressing some sort of certain emotional things. It's that, like, I remember vividly just kind of like there not being a real kind of space. There was no safe space for certain just emotional kind of like indulgence. And then it's interesting, it's only now growing up that I understand how I was really raised, or the kind of environment I grew up in, because I have such an aversion to like emotional indulgence. Because even like I went to acting school, and when I was in acting school, I had such an aversion to people that would use artistry as a emotional indulgence. So then it became less about the expression of something, maybe striving for something, you know, whether a social truth or a human truth or a artistic truth or a, you know, whatever it is, some type of representation of a truth or an expression of that, or some honesty being present. It became strictly about your emotional indulgence. And I think, like, to me, really kind of like looking at music and being just someone that as an artist enjoys kind of watching trends and watching rhythms of the way certain things and certain movements start happening. It's so interesting because it's like with the younger generation, like kids closer to my brother's age, and me and my brother have about like a 4-year age difference, a 3-year age difference.
He's older, right?
He's younger. My brother's younger than me. And you notice that there's such an indulgence emotionally.
Yeah.
Because I remember even like when Kid Cudi came out, I can't stand Kid Cudi. I still can't stand Kid Cudi's music, because it just, to me, is an emotional indulgence. Because that's even like the extension of what you're talking about, XX extension or whatever. He's just like kind of like an extension of that emotional indulgence, where it's like, woe is me, like, you know, oh, it's so hard, my life is so hard, this is blah, 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 this and that, and all this kind of stuff. Whereas that there's a kind of toughness, and you even see it in a lot of the like blue collar kind of communities.
That's true.
And you see it more in a lot of the kind of like the conservative circles in America, politically speaking,
Yeah.
where there's kind of like that intolerance toward emotional indulgence. Whereas that in a lot of the liberal, politically leaning spaces, they're very much there, allowing you to be so indulgent in your emotions. And then everyone and everything has to be there, you know, validating your indulgence. Because I remember we used to be in certain classes where it would be like a movement class. So like the teacher would like put a piece of music on and they'd be like, okay, now respond to this piece of music naturally based on your expression of how you respond to this piece of music. And I remember there used to be these two girls and they would like walk up and down the room in the middle of the room and they'd be like crying and like bawling their eyes out. And I would look at them and I'd be like, you need need a psychologist. Like you need therapy. Like you need help. Because this is like whatever's going on with you is past the point of artistic expression. Like that's not artistic expression at this point. That's an emotional instability. There's some sort of instability in your life that you're not able to come to terms with, that you're trying to pass off to us as artistic expression. So to me, it's always been interesting kind of like how people can find themselves in those kind of situations, or even the way that the environment, the societal environment, kind of indulges you to become indulgent and validates you to become indulgent, which is why I'm sort of like, it sounds like one psychologist here is just kind of like winging it, and then one psychologist there is winging it, and then another psychologist over there is winging it, and then a bunch of them sit down and get together, and then they're like, hey man, how's our manual for winging it? And what do you think needs to be adjusted? What do you think needs to be put in? And what do you think is missing? And then to me, it becomes kind of like, damn, like y'all are truly flying by the seat of your pants.
Well, the thing is, there's, okay, if you think of psychology as an umbrella, cultural umbrella, because it's within a culture.
Yeah.
It's within a system, right? So everything that you're talking about and everything that I've observed about you too, and your upbringing, like in the Merita culture is like, yeah, like you don't indulge certain emotional expressions. You don't like stew in it.
No one cares.
Right. Like you don't, it's like, if you're sad, keep moving. If like you're upset about it, oh well, like keep going. Like
that's what my mom tells me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a cultural thing. That's a culture.
Get up, you're weak, man. Get up.
You see kids.
She says that to you?
Yeah. She said that to me before.
Your mom's hilarious.
When we go to Togo and we see the kids at our healing center in Togo, they fall, they like bash their themselves on the ground. The adults are just like, get up. The kids are crying and wailing and being bratty. All the adults come in on them and start yelling at them. Like, you know, I don't know if they're speaking a different language, but it's like, get yourself together,
that would
basically.
be considered so bad here.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
There's a good example of that. One time we were there on one of the pilgrimages, and we were in Had Aisha, and when we were there was, and I think this is when I started to realize that a man can think like a woman, and a woman can think like a man, where there could be a man that has a feminine way of thinking, and there can be a woman that has a masculine way of thinking. And one of the children fell, and there's this guy's like 6'4".
Like he's tall.
He's tall, and he's a pretty big guy, and he just booked it toward this child that fell.
That, yeah.
And picked the child up.
And ran to pick the child up. Now, everyone else that was there was just sitting and kind of like looking at the kid. And then from afar, we were like, get up. Like, get up. Like, there's no indulgence. But the way the guy ran over and picked the child up and was like babying the child, that's when I started to realize, I was like, that indulgence, in a way, is a very feminine way of thinking.
Was he from there, or was he from?
He's a Black American.
Okay.
He's a Black dude from America.
Okay.
And that's when I started to realize, like, indulgence in and of itself is a very kind of like feminine way of thinking, because you kind of stew in things.
Most psychologists are females, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it makes
Nowadays.
sense. You rarely find, I don't want to say rarely, but you don't find as many male
You don't
psychologists.
find as many, yeah.
Because, I mean, have you guys ever seen that skit about the psychologist where it's like 5 minutes and he'll cure whatever you have?
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he just is like, the person's like,
Right.
oh, I have this thing. And then he just yells, stop.
Stop that.
He's like, stop that.
Stop that.
And then you're like, but I have. And then he's like, stop that. And then the person's like, but, and he's like, stop that. And he just yells at you. And then after 5 minutes,
Yeah.
if you feel like you're not cured, then he'll give you your money back.
Yeah.
But he has like a 100% success rate. Because all he does is he yells at you, stop that.
That's funny.
And that's kind of like the Merita culture in a lot of ways. Is like you have that person that everyone there is I don't want to say indoctrinated, is conditioned and is raised and educated in a way where you are not allowed to indulge in certain emotional fragilities.
You don't stew in it. If you learn to pick yourself up from an early age, then you don't even have time to stew in it.
Right.
You don't have time to stew in the negative emotions, the upset, the fear, whatever. It's just like keep moving. And that's an education. That's like, it shapes your brain at a young age.
So it makes me think, though, and makes me wonder, from your experience as a psychologist, like, how many or what percentage of people would you say that you've seen or diagnosed, how many of them are having issues with their fathers or have father issues? Because
Daddy issues?
daddy issues. From what Tutipsa just said, right? I started thinking about it. I'm like, for a lot of people, there might be a certain upbringing in their household where there is a masculine figure there, even if it's not your father. Like, there's like a strong masculine figure there. Like, I remember one time, like, I like to tell this story to my cousin all the time because I never let this down with him. I'm a skinny guy, right? I'm small. So he would put me in situations where I had to fight bigger people. Like, it's kind of messed up now that I think about it. Like, they used to get all of us together, like all the younger cousins. They used to put us in like this circle
Like
and make us fight each other. And then they would bet money on who would win.
Really?
Yeah, they would do that. And then he used to beat me up, and then I have to fight him. And he's tall and he's big, but I have to physically fight him.
Would you
right?
get like a cut of your wins? Like the bets?
No.
No?
No.
No.
Yeah.
You need to
But-
beat some of those asses.
Yeah. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is, like, there seems to be, in the communities I come from, right? There's always like some way or some form of like that masculine presence where it's like, get up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, what are you crying for? But
Yeah.
then in here, there's that, oh no, he fell, pick him up, like, oh, we gotta
Indulge him.
we gotta indulge that. So I'm wondering how many people are probably missing that education
Yeah.
in their household.
Well, it doesn't happen here. That's the thing. It's like
Period.
it doesn't happen
Period.
here.
I
Bro,
mean-
we live in a society where they talk about the toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
where
Right.
they try and remove that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, the whole system has daddy issues. That's why the system is here functioning like a dad.
I mean, it makes sense. The system killed its father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
I mean, the system, gets to replace itself as the father, especially even when families break up, the system becomes the father. But that's another podcast. Like, the thing is, what you're asking about daddy issues, right? I mean, like, modern psychology, also what it's turned into is not only daddy issues, but mommy issues. It's turned into like analyzing and going back to your past and analyzing your relationship with your parents and how they fucked up and how they fucked you up. Right. And that, in my experience, that never really goes well, because and I've never really trended in that direction where I allow people to go so far down the line where they're just stewing in that kind of like bitterness about their past or what their mom did to them or their father did to them. Yes, there are genuine cases of abuse in this system, because when you're living in a messed up system, there are messed up people. But in general, like when people come in with those sort of issues or angers towards their parents, it's like, you know, what they're failing to see is the point at time in which they're at now. They're failing to see the present moment. And then they're just staying stuck in a past moment. And then they're never really going to move on unless they say, oh, I'm here now. I'm the person that I am now. I'm the collection of influences that I am now. So I might as well just move from that point. You know, and I think that's also what MTOM gives us. I think that's like the point at which MTOM finds us in this system, the initiation. It's basically like, okay, you're a collection of your influences. You're a collection of your conditioning. You basically wore the jacket of the colonizer. You put it on and you became it. Now what? Right? So it's basically taking us from this point and being like, you did it, you're in it. You took the deal with the genie, maybe many generations back. And, you know, that's an initiatic concept. We
I
won't
was like, no
go
one knows
into
what
it.
you're talking about. What genie? So many people on the line are like, I'm going to deal with a genie.
Right. But it's basically like you wore the jacket of the colonizer and now you think it's you. Now you think it's you. You can't even blame your parents for that. Your parents were educated by their parents, who were educated by their parents, educated by their parents, probably through many hardships to get to the place that they were at. Only, you know, just even through survival circumstances. So like when you're really looking at your ancestry, you cannot blame your ancestors for the point in time in which you find yourself, because it's a sequence. It's a collection of sequences that got you here. But what MTOM does is it takes you at that point in your sequence and it says, are you happy with this point in your sequence? Like, do you agree with it? Has it helped you? And if you're not, if you're now seeing through certain things of where you're at now, then I can show you the way to turn it around. I can show you how to turn back. But you got to be willing. You got to be willing to take every concept that you're getting and turn your way back. And I mean, that's what modern psychology will never really do for people, because it's so indoctrinated within the system. Now, maybe you can find a good psychologist or mental health therapist out there who will try to divorce you from your conditioning if they're really thinking well and try to like move you in a different direction. But usually the direction they're moving you in is further into the system and the values of the system, right? And that's the whole struggle that I have with psychology now. Because it's like everything that I've been trained with is just indoctrinated with the values of the system and the colonizer and everything that this system stands for. So even if I'm trying to get people out of their hurt and their upset and their own way, right? Because some people just genuinely need help. They're just genuinely stuck or confused or hurt or gone through something, and they just want to move forward. And I can, you know, move them forward, but what I'm trained with in psychology is to move them forward further into the system, into maybe just a slightly better peg on the rung that they've been before. And people can feel better. They can feel better with that. They can get a good job, they can improve their marriage, they can have children, and they can, you know, work on themselves, right? But the problem becomes is when you're just moving them further into the values of the system, it's like it's like just one peg further on the hamster wheel. So they're never actually getting their mind, their brain, their hearts, their spirits into a different place, which will actually allow them to grow. And that's what MTOM does. And now, if for any initiates listening out there, if you're still taking MTOM as if it's just another part of the system or an academic exercise, like you can just get the material and then just make it like one more notch on your belt within the system. Because if we're honest, a lot of us have to be honest with each other and ourselves, that when we come into MTOM, when we take this initiation, we're taking it from the lens of just one step further on our journey. We don't take it from the lens of having to actually take ourselves out completely, like literally take ourselves out completely and put ourselves over here, which is in a completely different culture, completely different lens, completely different way of thinking, and it has to destroy the previous way of thinking. But that process is so painful that what a lot of us do is we just keep going along with this line of thinking that we're doing it, thinking that we're taking ourselves out of the system, but we're just still standing on the values of the system in order to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're preaching to the choir. Like, I think the reason why, because I'm someone that before even coming into this, there is so many different avenues that I was looking for certain solutions for in my life. And I've tried psychology. I've tried psychiatrists. I've tried it all. Like even the tests you're talking about, I've tried all those different kind of tests because they were trying to figure out what kind of disorder I had. And they were trying to put me in, you name it, they did it all. Like even the things you're talking about, I remember blood tests, the CAT scans, like MRIs, like you name it. Like locking me in a room, I was like 17, like locking me in a room with like children's toys to see what I'll do. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? Like,
they're testing you to see if you're the reincarnation of the Buddha.
The Buddha. Like to see what I do with the toys. And the interesting thing to me though is like none of it worked.
Yeah.
Like it was a complete and utter waste of time to the point where I was like,
Because your spirit was like, this isn't it.
Yeah. And then eventually I was just like, okay, like I need to leave the States in order to find it. Like I need to leave America in order to find it. And then that's when I was kind of like, where can I find it? And then I like started to think about it, and then I'm like, okay, maybe it's here. Maybe it's in India. Maybe it's in Peru. Maybe it's here, maybe it's there, all this kind of stuff. But it never once occurred to me, like, and this is as an African, it never once occurred to me, like, you know,
it's in Africa.
It's in Africa.
I know. Yeah.
Like,
nobody,
doesn't
it
occur
never
to a
goes
lot
to
of people,
anybody.
yeah.
No one.
I know.
Because the thing is like, the system makes sure to play you in a way where they're like, where's the last place people are going to look? Where's the last place we need everyone to look? So then they make sure to condition you into thinking that you can't look here. And if you look here, you're not going to find it. If you look in Africa, you're not going to find it. And that's where you should not look.
Or it's evil, it's dark, it's
Or
dirty.
it's evil, it's dark,
it's
corrupted,
corrupted.
it's sick.
Yep.
It's like all these different things. So they do such a great job, because I was sitting there and I was like, man, I don't know. And then this is the thing, is I came across, now once I realized, okay, now I need to start looking at the indigenous, and I need to now start going outside of America and looking within the indigenous circles. I came across a Mexican indigenous shaman. And I'll never forget when some of the manifestations of some of the spiritual issues I was dealing with started to manifest. The way he looked at me, I was like, this guy doesn't know what it is. I was like, this guy has no idea what's going on with me. And that's when I was like, waste of time, next. And I was like, now let me look somewhere else. Let me go somewhere else. But it was at the end of that conversation, someone directed me in the direction of Africa. And someone directed me in the direction of a priest that was able to assist me. And a priest that was able to help me. You guys all know who I'm talking about. But to the uninitiated, I could say it's Nava, right? And the thing is that like you come to the conclusion at some point or another where you have to ask yourself like, what's actually working and what's not working. And then the problem is like people take feeling better for a certain amount of time as a solution.
It's working.
But
right.
then that's still emotional indulgence. Because the thing is like that's what they get you. And then if they can't get you to kind of identify with the emotional indulgence, what they do is then they now want to give you something to cessate the chemical occurrences, like the physical occurrences within the brain. So they want to give you things to shut things off. So they want to numb certain parts of your physical anatomy in order for you not to be able to understand that that thing is still happening, but you're just now numb to it or you're oblivious to it, which is where the medications come in. Because the medications aren't actually dealing with any of the conditions outside of the physical. But what they're doing is they're just making you physically numb or devoid of the actual symptoms physically. And then you think that that's a cure. But then you're just still locked in it. Once you take it, once you stop taking it, it gets even worse.
So would you say it's really just a matter of ego from those who run the system, right? It's probably an ego thing because let's be for real. I'm sure they know that there's the solutions, because for us to say that there's a mental health crisis, and if you really check the numbers, I think it's mainly in places that are like considered first world countries like America. I think Japan, they have high suicide rates, and not much places other than like mainly like Western civilization have these mental health issues. Like if you go to Merita, you go to like Eastern, South Pacific Asia, like these things don't exist. It's not there. So what is it about the people who run these societies and run these systems that's making them not want to just say, well, we don't know what it is? Because even like in me looking up what even psychology and a psychiatry is, it's like it's really coming from a theory.
Exactly.
There's no concrete science behind it. It's all scientific theory.
Yeah.
Well, it was like Freud and this other guy, Jung.
Young, yeah.
Jung and Freud.
You know, the original patients that they studied on were like hysterical young women, usually.
Have you ever seen the
Hysterical.
movie A Dangerous Method? You guys ever seen
Yeah,
it?
No.
I think maybe.
It's
a while
about
ago.
like Carl Jung and Freud, and they come across like a young sexual addict, like a very attractive young sexual addict, and it's about how like they can't resist having sex with her even though she's like their patient.
Client, yeah.
It's
like
called A Dangerous
it's
Method.
all very messed up. I mean, but the thing is, like,
That's
It's like
that's
the
the guy.
The sick trying
Those
to
are, those are the guys that
like,
you're here now swimming in their suggestions.
right. I mean, not to get so far off the topic, but like, you know, that's the problem that we're running into. Like, to Kadra Zariman's question, the powers that be, right? Do they know? Do they know what's the actual problem? Are they giving you a fake solution? Are they giving you a Band-Aid solution? And I think that's the big question. I think that's the question that Gator Gates always tries to answer, is like, who's running the show? Who's puppeting the strings? Who knows what they know? And why do they keep doing what they do? And then there's probably a tier under them that have no clue, right? Are just ignorant, are just
They're just doing their job.
in the system, doing their job, trained to do their job, think that they're helping people, you know, think that they're doing the right thing. You know, and so you have, I think, levels to this, you know, and I think, and then you have people who are just genuinely confused and sick and trying to get help, and then they find some level of help within the system, right, through something. But then the real solution, like what we're really trying to talk about, right, the real solution is like actual culture. Right? Like, you cannot find a solution devoid of culture, like, for long term, right? Like, even if you go take your child to a shaman in the middle of the Amazon or the middle of the bush in Merita and get some sort of spiritual solution. Even if you take that child and bring them back into the culture of the United States and America, they might still end up in problems, right? So real solutions can never be divorced from real culture. And then, you know, what the system will never tell you about these problems is that they're not just in the brain, they're not just in the mind, they're not just in the emotions. They may be coming from bloodlines, they may be coming from the spirit, they may be coming from the reincarnation, they may be coming from any number of issues, energetic, the relationship with the earth, their relationship with the ancestors, and they'll never give you any of those solutions because A, they don't know about it, or B, maybe they do know about it, but they're hiding it on some level. And so then you have people chasing their tail, running in circles, looking for solutions that will never exist in the system. They, you know, at best, you can get what you guys talked about on Gate of Gates last week is you can get access to like controlled opposition. Right? So you can kind of get access now to, there's all these alternative forms of spirituality, alternative healing, all these alternative
More
methods.
New Age stuff.
Yeah, like New
Just
Age.
repackaged.
It's just
issues.
religious. It's religious. The religious perspective or the religious.
Right.
It just religion just
Right.
repackages something else.
And,
New
and
Age.
it kind of feels good for a while. I know I got really deep in it for a while, and it kind of feels good for a while, and you kind of feel like you're getting out. Right? You
It
kinda-
feels different.
Yeah, you feel like you found something. You found like a, you know,
It
a
does, it
side
does.
door. You found a side door. to
Like
kind
you've
of like-
opened up the
Yeah.
matrix a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, it's
peeking
like
through.
dessert.
Yeah.
It's like until you're done eating dessert, then you're just like, ugh. What did I just
Yeah.
eat? I just ate a whole gallon of ice cream.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know how in the Matrix, the guy who betrays them, he's eating the steak. He's like,
He's
I
like, I
know.
want to go back.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I know it's fake. I know it's not
I
real,
wanna go
but
back.
it's
It's
so
so good.
good.
And he's like,
that's
but
the
I want to
system.
be. He's
Yeah.
like, I want to be a billionaire when I go back.
Right, but that's the
Yeah.
system, right? But
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
new age is like it's the dessert in the system
Exactly.
that you're eating, but
It's
then
the
you
steak.
think it's like the
Yeah.
real thing, but
Yeah.
it's so sweet, but it's
Yeah.
not.
It feels really good, and like you get, you know, all these different perspectives, and like it's, you know, more of that like emotional coddling kind of thing where it's like you are love, you are the best, you are a light worker, you deserve everything, you deserve to manifest your highest desires.
You're a god.
You're a god, you're a goddess.
I am a
like,
god.
you know, everything, and it feels so good. And it feels like, also feels like kind of a rebellion in a way, because it's like a rebellion from religion being like, you are a sinner, right? And you're a terrible person. Now you get to be a god or a goddess. I mean, who wouldn't take that? That feels pretty good. But then,
Sign me up.
but then, you know, when you come across reality, like actual spiritual reality, it doesn't feel good. Like, I mean, anyone who's come across this path can attest to that. Like, anyone who's into real Kemetic spirituality, I'm sorry, but it doesn't feel good. It's not coddling your emotions. Reality does not hit you in a sweet, nice way. It doesn't hold you and comfort you. Like, reality hits you and knocks you across the face to be like, wake up, right? Wake up. This is you. This is you. This thing standing over here, which you don't want to look at, that's you. With this thing that you've been running away from for a really long time, that's you. Sorry to tell you, but that's your reality. Right? Where you're over here in like the new age, like dancing and like having tree parties. Like, you're not actually looking.
Did you see that video with the white people surrounded in a circle and they're doing free movement?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's like the kind of stuff they try and encourage you to do in acting school.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of dance moves and like type of environments they try and cultivate. And then I would just be like, I'm in the wrong place. Like, because that's the kind of stuff that they would, and it'd always be some like supercharged, like masculine thinking white woman. Like she'd be there and she'd be like, free yourself. Dance. Yeah, she's like, you, don't look at me, dance. And you'd just be like, oh my God. And then she would reward those that would like just have emotional indulgence. And she would hate those that wouldn't. And like after a while, I just kind of like resigned myself to it. And I was like, the way I think and the way I actually am will never align with any of the things that these people are here doing. And which is why, like, every time I would do like my yearly review, they'd be like, why do you come back to this place? They'd be like, why do you keep coming back? Because you don't seem to be game with a lot of it. And I'm just like, I think I'm just kind of like biding my time. Because that's the thing is like that's what the culture becomes about. Is that the culture becomes about like, you know, indulging that type of stuff. And then that's what becomes cutting edge. Is like, you know, it's like this culture of no culture, which means like anything can become something profound or something cultural, instead of you understanding like that's just some like human bullshit that you're indulging, and that you don't need to be indulging that shit. And then people are just like, no, but this is my culture, this is who I am, this is my identity. And then it becomes so dangerous because people just base their identities based on standing around and doing like that video that you guys are talking about.
And now they're layering, people are layering that kind of sentiment, that kind of like emotional indulgence on top of indigenous culture. That's the problem that's happening right now.
Causing a huge confusion.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, now we can dance, we can take psychedelics, you know, we can take plant medicine, which were originally for like deep levels of healing for people who are really crazy, or just for the shaman to take. And now they're using it to like be like, I'm one with the universe, I'm one with spirit, and like I am love and light, and you know, I can take whatever this spiritual opening is that I don't even understand, and then use it to think that I'm standing on something, right? Use it to think that I understand even indigenous culture, and that I'm like traveling through indigenous culture to like heal myself. Or I'm like taking or using a part of indigenous culture in like the correct way. But what you're actually doing is you're appropriating a part of indigenous culture that you don't understand. It's devoid of culture. You just removed it from actual culture.
But you want it. You want culture because you don't have it.
Right. I mean, people maybe are genuinely seeking for culture. If you're going down that line where you're seeking indigenous culture, like some people are just genuinely seeking. But what now you're finding is a lot of the new age ideologies just layered on top of indigenous culture, which were never found in that actual culture.
Right.
Like,
well, I think we have to be clear for people when we say what we're talking about when we say culture, because people don't understand what we mean when we say that. Because we could talk about how people don't have culture. But then it's like, what does that really mean? Then people are kind of like, what do you mean I don't have culture? Because I feel like I have a culture. Or they feel like they come from a culture. So then, like, what does that mean when we say, like, the solution is in culture?
Yeah. Well, culture is not wearing headdresses. It's not the way that you dress. It's not... even the way that you speak. It's like, what are the actual principles, taboos, customs that culture is standing on? Like when you really enter into a real initiation, and when you really come in contact with real indigenous culture, it's very rigid. It's not fun, you know, it's not pleasant in the way that it makes you feel good. So culture, when it really starts to hit you, like when you're really kind of in a culture, not just studying a culture, when you're actually trying to like live within a culture that maybe you weren't born within, or that you're trying to really like embody, it becomes painful, because you're going to basically be placing yourself and putting yourself into a level of rigidity and principles which your body, mind, and heart may not understand. Does
You
that
know-
make sense?
You know, with this whole conversation, like, it's really like I'm thinking about it in a way where it's like, when we say people don't have a culture, right? Because even looking at one of the questions, like, the thing is, we all are living here in the United States. The United States is a country or a civilization, if I can call it that, that's founded upon going against its cultural background.
Yeah.
But not only is it founded upon going against its own cultural background, it's founded upon going against even the natural principles and values of the natural culture of this land.
Yeah.
So when we say there's no culture in America, it's because the foundation of America really started in them attacking culture.
Yeah.
They came here and destroyed the natural culture here.
Exactly.
Because when you talk about culture, you have to talk about your environment. You have to talk about your reality. Like, the language has to be a reflection of the environment and of the people and of the principles and the values those people function off of. Mainly how somebody thinks and how somebody approaches life and how they approach their environment, how they approach existence. Now, with us here in the United States and Western society, we don't have an approach to the existence that's actually showing that we have sort of like a mutual respect or kind of like a harmony with it. Our approach is really very much destructive. So if that's the approach that we take towards the environment, then that means it's not a culture, because culture is an approach towards the environment, but we have an approach against the environment, which is what's causing our own self-destruction. So it makes sense as to why you can see Western society have mental instabilities the way it does, because we're not even stable within the environment itself. We're almost anti-nature. Like, we're against nature. We're very much against ourselves.
Yeah.
So obviously we're going to suffer for it, whether it be physically, whether it be emotionally, mentally, in which all these things you can't even divorce from each other because they all kind of tie into each other. It's like, if you maybe have a problem spiritually, that can show up against you mentally. It can show up against you physically. It's vice versa. If you have a problem physically, it might be a result of something spiritually. And even that can show up mentally. Like the Teeps was saying, like, you have this spiritual predisposition, but then the system will now attack that because they don't want individuals to know they have access to those things, because those kind of individuals can actually see what things really are. Because as of now, we live in a fake reality, a fake bubble, which is, again, why it can't be a culture, because a culture has to be defined by your reality. So if the reality at hand is an artificial one, and then there's people or individuals who can see beyond that reality, that's a problem. That's a danger for the society. So of course they want to cut that out. Of course they want to attack that thing physically to shut it down.
Yeah. And, like, it's interesting because there's people, you look across the United States, where we're called a melting pot, right? So there are all different cultures that come together. And you could say that some people and families and groups of people have retained more aspects of traditional culture than others, right? You could see pockets of Hispanic culture, pockets of Chinese culture, pockets of, you know, any sort of culture that you can think about. African culture even, right? Of, like, people who've retained their aspects of those cultures. But the problem becomes when that pocket is living within the broader system of no culture and even destroying culture, like you're saying, Kajazariman, is like that larger reality starts to penetrate like at every corner, even so then your next generation and your next generation and your next generation loses culture successively each generation, and by the time you get to the fourth generation, you're just in the melting pot with everybody else, right? So then this is the problem we have with, like, retaining traditional culture, is that it has to be enveloped, right? We talk about developing countries. When you're actually developing countries, you're taking them out of nature. And so when you're really preserving a traditional culture, it has to remain enveloped in nature to preserve its core aspects and the rigidity and the taboos and the customs and the principles. And that's the whole problem that we're in now in modern society in America, is that like we haven't remained enveloped. And so even if we think we have aspects of our traditional cultures intact, it's like we can even see how much is penetrated every single day by the broader system and the education that you get from outside that starts to wear away and chip away at everything. And that's the brilliance of colonization, and that's the brilliance of the system as it's designed to do. And it's like even now to the point where even people in traditional villages, in places that are enveloped in nature, are being tempted and enticed to leave those places to go to cities, to go make money, to go have a taste of that other culture.
Yeah, they make it almost impossible to have the sense of survival anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's like even like your natural area is like going to be encroached upon.
Mm-hmm.
So people now, and I know we're not getting to questions right away, but the question we're about to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just save it. I'll save that because it really made me think that question. And it's like, what's really the difference between people in traditional areas and people in Western like civilization?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is there this difference in mentality, and why is there this distinction of mental sickness and happiness? Because it seems like the people who seem to be quote unquote suffering the most are the most happiest, but yet somehow we here in Western society have all of these things, all these gadgets, all this wealth, but yet we have the most problems.
Mm-hmm. The people with the most mental disorders, statistically, are children and adults who come from very poor backgrounds and very rich backgrounds. Very poor and very rich. So it's like the wealth aspect and the money aspect is not saving people from mental disorders. It's not saving people from themselves. And it's actually creating more issues. Like the excessive wealth that we have in this country actually produces children with more mental disorders than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that really listening to, because I remember one time I went to someone's funeral for their mom, and it's like people that were pretty financially well off, at least to my knowledge. And I remember the way that they were speaking about their mom was in a way where they were kind of speaking about them like almost like as if they were at the funeral of like a pet.
What?
Like not at the funeral of like a parent, because even like there were a few of the sons that came up and then talked about like how what their mom had done or how their mom had shaped them. But what they were touching on and speaking about was like, she took us on trips. We went here and we did this. And the interesting thing is that like people tend to equate money with some sort of stability. And the thing is that money in and of itself doesn't respect instability. So people think that money in and of itself is going to somehow be attracted to you if you're if you're unstable. And it's like money's not going to come to something that's unstable. Like it's just not. Like there has to be some aspect of stability. And it seems that people are now kind of functioning in a way where everything is being lost in translation in a way that no one is really stopping and thinking about, because the points you guys were making, what you guys were touching on, to really kind of encapsulate it and kind of put it in a way for people to really understand, is that you don't find these so-called disorders in natural environments and people that live in natural environments. So you don't find ADHD. You don't find schizophrenia.
Depression.
You don't find depression. You don't find bipolar. You don't find personality. What's that one called? The personality what?
Personality disorders.
Personality disorders. But what's the specific one? Where it's like you think you're like multiple people.
Isn't that schizophrenia?
Multiple personality disorder.
Borderline personality disorder. Some. You don't find that kind of stuff because people are enveloped in nature, like Tiasta was saying, and then nature itself doesn't view you as something that's out of harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't understand that a lot of these things that they're experiencing can be a result of being out of harmony within nature. But nobody ever stops to think about that because their concept of nature is what you see on the Netflix TV show of like the Earth, or what you see on like the Disney Channel in terms of like a walrus, trying to get food, and then there's like a polar bear there, and then the polar bear is going to stop the walrus, and then now there's a seal, and then they start talking about the mating habits of penguins, and then they're like, yes, that's nature, and then they don't understand that the reason why people even have to sit down and kind of show you those kind of things is because you're so far removed from the natural environment that's the way that they have to kind of make you think that you are still a part of the natural environment. They have to send somebody out there to shoot a video in the middle of nowhere in the cold and then almost freeze to death, and then they're just like they're watching a family of hippos, or that they're watching a family of polar bears, and then they're like, and then they're going to slap together some sort of narration on it, and then they're going to get this guy to then talk about this and talk about that. And then you're going to sit there and you're going to be like, yeah, that's nature. And then you never stop to think to yourself, like, what do I look like in a natural environment? What does a human being look like in a natural environment? As opposed to where I am. That this is where we're sending our so-called, cohorts within this environment to go get us this kind of thing for us to feel like we are understanding nature. And then even coming to some sort of conclusion to be like, maybe I'm not a part of nature. Maybe nature doesn't view me as being a part of it. Maybe that's really the problem. Because if maybe I can harmonize myself and contextualize myself within the environment that I find myself in, which is nature to begin with, it's not the society that tries to superimpose what they think is an interpretation of nature, which is why all those videos are a superimposed imposition of what they think is going on within nature, because they're just focusing on one aspect that they happen to come across in terms of a polar bear and what a polar bear is doing. And then they feel like, oh yeah, well, we can take the polar bear and we can remove it from its natural instincts, or we can remove it from this and we can do this and all this kind of stuff. And then that's what they contextualize themselves as having a mastery of nature over. Or they can get your Weather Channel app and then they'd be like, yeah, the sun's going to rise at this time. Sun's going to set at this time. It's going to be this degrees. It's going to be this amount of degrees, or all this kind of stuff. And then you just say to yourself, like, at what point do you start questioning whether or not you are suffering from these kind of things based on the way you've been raised and based on the way you've been removed from your own natural context? But people don't stop to think about that, because people don't want to come to terms with the fact that maybe you've been sold a lie, maybe you've bought the lie, maybe you've eaten the lie, and then now you have to come to terms with, you have to now divorce yourself from that lie. And people don't want to divorce themselves from that lie. That's the truth of it, is that they're not looking to find an alternative to how they're living. They're looking to find a better comfort within how they're living, or what they're moving toward and how they're going about things. It's only when things become so bad and you've exhausted all options that now you start looking for a solution outside of what the system presents to you. That's why even within our organization, we tend to find people that come to us when they're at their wits' end, when they've exhausted every option. Because at that point, that's when you're like, maybe I'm going the wrong way. Maybe I'm living a lie. But it's only because you haven't been able to make every other lie acceptable or palatable in terms of finding a solution. Because nature, or even your ancestors within nature, have forced you to now exhaust all of those options and look for something else, to look towards them, to look at yourself, to deal with the reality that Tiasta was talking about. And people don't want to do that. People want to continue to live the lie. And because they want to continue to live the lie, that's why they find themselves in this kind of situation. And this is the thing, is now we're at a juncture where we're being more honest about things and being more forthcoming about things and just telling people as it is. Because if you see someone suffering from something, there's no nice way to tell someone that they're living a lie. No matter how much someone despises you for telling them the truth, at the end of the day, you still told them the truth, and you're still helping them step out of that lie. But people will resent you for helping them get out of that lie in this society, not in a natural-based society. Someone will never resent you for telling them the truth. They'll appreciate you. They will even come and thank you for telling them the truth. But here, the truth is something that you deny, and a lie is something you embrace. And people don't want to admit that. And the truth of the matter is that whether it's your psychologist, whether it's your psychiatrist, whether it's your doctor, they are just as uninformed as you. But they seem to be under the impression that they're not, because they've gotten certain accolades, or they've gotten certain accredited titles and all this kind of stuff. But then when you really start picking apart the approach and at the basis, the foundation and the essence of what they claim to be standing on, and you really start looking at it and thinking about it and picking at it and scratching the surface just a little bit, then you start to come to the realization that, you're not really standing on anything. You don't really have any real validity. You don't really have anything to really help or offer. And then you have to ask yourself at that point, what now? What are you going to do about it? Because you can continue to believe the lie and you can continue to go into the lie, or you can say to yourself, well, you know what? Maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe I'm going to find it somewhere else. Maybe it doesn't exist where I think it exists. Maybe I have to go to Africa. Maybe I have to go to people that, are part of the original cradle of civilization and that they've remained in it. And for them, they're perfectly content not being a part of whatever nonsense and craziness I find myself being a part of. But you have to ask yourself that honesty has to be there. Because right now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, everything you guys are hearing us talk about and everything we're saying, we're just here informing you that there's a problem. But what now? We're informing you that there's a fallacy. We're informing you that the approach is flimsy, as Tiasta was saying. But what now? But that's something for you to decide how you're going to handle that and how you're going to go about that and what you're going to do about it. Because at the end of the day, keep doing what you're doing, but if it doesn't work, then you got to be honest about it not working. Let's go into some of these questions. So Matthew Ruta, shout out to Matthew Ruta. We appreciate you for coming out to visit us.
Big up, man. Big up.
We hope you're doing well, settling back into things in Toronto. Shout out to the Toronto Temple as well. Matthew Ruta's question is, what is the difference between a spiritual predisposition and a mental illness in the Kemetic sense? There's no such thing as a mental illness in the Kemetic sense. There's a lack of
harmonization between spiritual energies and physical energies. And then if you can identify where the lack of harmony is based on the manifestation of the spiritual energies within the physical, then that's what allows you to identify what the so-called mental disorder is. Because in actuality, someone that's suffering from schizophrenia or somebody that's suffering from a bipolar diagnosis or somebody that's suffering from ADHD, maybe they have certain spiritual things that allow them a so-called extrasensory ability or a so-called, extra energy or so-called this or so-called that you're considering a disorder based on how numb and devoid of life everyone else around them is. Maybe they're not the ones with the problem. Maybe it's the fact that everybody else that's been chemically castrated, physically castrated, castrated on every level due to what's in the food, due to what's on TV, due to what's in the drugs, due to what's in the water, due to what's around you, due to the thinking, due to the conditioning. Maybe that's the problem. A spiritual predisposition is something that someone is born with that affords them a spiritual ability that allows them to maybe do something in the non-material that somebody else does not have, because it comes with a very specific purpose. It comes with a very specific specialty that people that have those abilities are normally individuals that are able to access dimensions that other people cannot. That's why, contrary to popular belief, the governments have an interest in those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
The governments go to those said people, trying to recruit them, trying to get them, trying to bring them into their organizations, because they understand, how does this person have the ability to maybe sense their way out of things that other people don't? How does this person have the ability to maybe identify how to handle a situation that other people don't? How is it that this person seems to be able to pick up on certain tendencies that other people can't pick up on, and then they're able to maybe identify certain trends or identify certain patterns that allow them to now identify what's coming next? They know, they understand it to some extent, which is why they've stopped trying to maybe cessate those things in certain people, but then they want certain people around to be able to utilize them. So it's maybe a misunderstanding for somebody to say that in the Kemetic society there's such a thing as a mental illness. That's not somebody with a mental illness. That's somebody with a fully functioning brain and their full capacities. Whereas that someone that maybe doesn't have those abilities is somebody with a low functioning capacity, somebody that doesn't have a brain that's fully functional. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up. Like, a lot of what we call mental illness in this society is a spiritual predisposition that's not taken care of, that has never been cultivated, that's never been nourished in any way. It's not like in traditional culture, there's not what we call mentally sick people. Like, that can occur when there's spiritual issues, when there's energetic issues that need to be solved with a healer.
Mm-hmm.
That can manifest as like, a certain sort of craziness or inability to be in reality. But a lot of those things can be solved with traditional solutions rather than just covering up the symptoms for life of someone through medication.
I would also just add, like, there's also an aspect where sometimes it's also just somebody who's allowed their emotions to reach a point where they just literally give up on life. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people you see in the street that, you might consider as like homeless or mental. It's not even that they're mental. It's just they literally are not allowing themselves, or they didn't allow themselves to get past their own selves to the point where they've just given up. And now there's like, what word would I even use? They have no drive.
They have like no will. Their will has been broken.
Yeah, their will is just broken. There's no goal anymore. They're just there. They're just animated. The spirit's actually even left. The spirit's not even in the body
like
anymore.
A zombie.
Yeah, it's this walking zombie. They're just animated beings just walking around.
The next question here is from Chem Warrior Zulbukande. Shout out to you. I know you're always always tuning in and supporting us, so we appreciate the support, and we hope you continue to support and tune in. Can the modern government really influence your thoughts by using modern technology? I would say that
Television, radio, media.
like, I would say, yeah, they do influence your thoughts using modern technology, but I also think you're giving them a lot more credit than they deserve. Because the thing is that everything they try and do to kind of lock you in certain states and certain like places, and how they always try and make you kind of think a certain way or kind of function a certain kind of way, if you're taking steps to kind of like detox from those things and then really understanding like how those things are being used against you, then it becomes very difficult for those things to be successfully utilized against you. But you have to be kind of finding ways for those things to not be utilized against you in order to put yourself in that kind of position. And I think one way that they kind of get a lot of people is through the ideologies that you think that they have more power than they actually do. Because the thing is that the game is completely dependent upon you realizing that you hold all the cards. They don't want you to realize that you hold all the cards. And you hold all the cards because you can decide to turn it off at any given moment. And then they're not able to control you at that point. And that if you decide to turn it off, you turn off the TV, you turn off the radio, you turn off the messages that they're always trying to put in your head. And then you just learn how to start thinking for yourself, and you learn a different kind of approach, then those things become very difficult to be utilized against you. Because now you're able to put yourself in a position where you're able to think about what's being put in front of you based on how it's trying to make you feel, based on how it's trying to either attack your emotions or attack your logics or attack your thinking or attack your psychology, attack you spiritually, attack you energetically, attack you on so many different levels. And you become impenetrable based on you fortifying yourself in that capacity. Me personally, I have no interest in giving my sense of power to someone else by being like, you have the ability to control me. You can't control me. If I decide to turn it off, that means I'm the one in control. And then if I decide now to figure out how you've been trying to control me, and then I am able to pinpoint it, and then now I can put myself in a position so that you're not able to control me anymore, then I hold all the cards. You're not going to convince me that you hold all the cards. You don't have me locked in a prison. You don't have me locked in some sort of state, aside from ones that maybe I'm not attuned to yet. So then the question becomes, how do you start to figure out how those things are being used against you and not put yourself in a state where you're giving people power that they don't actually have? That's why I always find myself in situations where I don't blame other people for my circumstances, because then that gives me no ability or no accountability or no responsibility in order to empower myself in order to change certain situations. That's why I could care less. I could care less about including other people in the equation of how I found myself in the situation. I always put the accountability and the onus of blame on myself about how I set myself up for the situation. And that's what initiation, and that's what people from natural environments are functioning according to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why MTOM is so intelligent. That's why Perronk initiation is so intelligent, because what it does is it literally takes you out of all of the emotional hooks of the system. It allows you to see through them, right? It's like all of the emotional hooks that might have gotten you before, that might have like pulled you in, whatever you're talking about, Chem Warrior, which is like can the system control your mind? Yeah, it controls our minds every single day until you decide for it not to control your mind anymore, until you make the conscious decision, or until you get the guidance through something outside of the system like a traditional initiation, like MTOM, you know, where it's showing you the emotional hooks that you've been hooked into, showing you the fallacies, showing you, you know, cracking open truth so that the emotional hooks and the fallacies of the system no longer penetrate you. They don't, it's like there's nowhere to hook in anymore.
There's another question here from Chem Warrior. What would be the reason for modern government to inject microchips into the human body? You have to go ask them. I don't know. The other question from Chem Warrior is, why do modern medical systems reject traditional medications or eating healthy to better yourself? Do modern doctors really understand the human body? No, they don't.
That's a good question.
They just can cut it open and then look at it and maybe try and put the systems back together, but they truly don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
They're still studying it.
They know the anatomy of it very well, but in terms of how the functionality of it works and how it works with everything in conjunction, including the mind, the spirit, the heart, everything, they don't really know it.
Yeah, and I would just add that the modern medical system is only about 300 years old or so, and even when it in its infancy, it was during the Industrial Revolution. So that's the time when they were making industry and they were making like trade and like basically like the economy that we see today. That's when it was first being developed. So everything at that point was all about profit. So it's just really a business and it's all about profit. So the goal isn't necessarily to like help people per se. It's really to find out how we can have as many treatments and as many products out there on the market possible to yield the most amount of profit. That's simply it.
Yeah. Next question is from Matthew Ruta. Shout out to Gilberto Gonzalez. I see you active in the chat, but I don't see you posing any questions, but welcome.
Shout out.
Yeah, because, I mean, he said he's new, so welcome, Gilberto. Matthew Ruta has a follow-up question. Is there a difference between spiritual blockages, negative energies, spiritual predispositions, and mental illness in a comedic sense?
That's a big question, Matthew. You threw a lot at us there.
Yeah. There's a big difference between all three of those.
I think we covered mental illness and spiritual predisposition in the last question, but in terms of what are you talking about? Blockages?
Spiritual blockages.
And negative energies? Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, in a comedic sense, in traditional sense, what we know is that the space is not empty. What we think we're traveling around in space is not empty. There are other energies, other beings occupying the space maybe that we don't have access to from this dimension. And so some of those energies may not be to our highest benefit. And so we can sometimes find ourselves attached to those energies or somehow coming in contact with those energies. And sure, that can derail us, you know, spiritually. So a good healer, a good traditional healer will understand that and will be able to identify that issue and be able to provide solutions for that issue. And then blockages, I assume maybe you're talking maybe on an energetic level. Certainly, there could be blockages to a person's energy. I won't go too far into that. That's like an initiatic concept that, you know, you'll get later, Matthew Ruta, in Perong. But yeah, certainly your energies may not be free flowing for a number of reasons in the body.
There's a lot of other questions here, so I'm just gonna start cherry picking, because can modern governments really go out of space or travel to other worlds? Well, actually, there's a question here from Gilberto. How many children you think were misdiagnosed, and how many children you think were affected negatively by the medication that was prescribed due to being misdiagnosed?
How many?
I would say every child that you come across is misdiagnosed because they're not dealing with a disorder to begin with. So there's no reason to give them any pills or drugs to begin with. So I would say every child that's diagnosed with some sort of disorder is misdiagnosed
because there's nothing wrong with them. There's something wrong with the system that claims to be an authority on having an ability to diagnose people. That's the problem. So everyone. And yeah, that's why they have to tell you the complications that arise from using their drugs. They have to tell you how it's going to mess your life up any further, because it's going to. Because they're like, well, just so you know, it's the best we could do. But in our best that we can do, this is how it's going to destroy you in the process. Good luck. Chem Warrior's on a roll. But
Go out of space.
or he was on a roll. Yeah. Is it true that the Dogon, communicate with beings from outer space? And can modern governments really go outer space to travel to other worlds? Is such technology available on this planet? No, bro. The governments can't go to other planets. It's like fairy tales that they sell you to make themselves appear to be more powerful than they are. So doesn't trauma in Kemetic community or Africa? I don't understand. Or should we just function as a machine? Doesn't it take time to heal according to the individual, or should we pretend like everything is all right?
That's a question I want to address, actually.
Even if heal, it sounds like these are all questions that tie in together, so let me read them and then you can answer.
Okay.
Even if heal past trauma caused by others, why should we forgive so easily? Are we saying we should forgive the colonial oppressors? So is there happiness in the Kemetic culture, or is everything a hardcore true to overcome? Basically, to be a Kemetic is to embrace suffering.
Yeah, these are interesting questions about healing. It's one thing I wanted to go back and address is that, healing is a process, and anyone who's looking for solutions in the modern system, anyone who's coming with like anxiety or depression or emotions that are out of whack, like, we're not saying that they're just like buck up and get over it and like, just figure it out. Like, there's people looking for genuine solutions out there. There's people who've genuinely been through things in life, who genuinely had real bad experiences that have affected them. Genuinely, people who are dealing with spiritual issues, people who are dealing with, not understanding how to manage their emotions, maybe never educated in how to do that. And so, healing is a process, like, genuine healing. If you're genuinely looking for a solution, because some people are just looking for a Band-Aid, if we're honest about it. Some people are just looking to feel better, go home, feel better.
Be coddled,
put on their TV show, put on their movie, and go to bed. I mean, if we're really honest, actual healing, it can be very painful. Actual healing, to find your true self and divorce it from all of the conditioning and all of the things that the modern system has told you that you are, that can be a very painful process. And it's not just about, you're never happy, you're just suffering all the time in life. No, but there's a saying in Kemetic spirituality, you have to make friends with suffering. Because that life contains that. That life contains obstacles and challenges which are going to get you to your next level of growth, your next level of evolution, to actually be that spirit and that manifestation of the spirit that you're meant to be on this planet. So you embrace that. You don't run away from those challenges. You embrace it. And that's actually what gets you closer and closer and closer to that feeling of actual comfortability within yourself, actual connection with yourself, actual healing within yourself, like the actual truth of yourself. And that in itself, to me, is like happiness. That's the holy grail. It's not about feeling ecstatic or feeling great or feeling loving or feeling everything positive all of the time, because that's not reality.
That's actually robotic.
That's robotic. Exactly. Life contains ups, it contains downs, right? It contains good times, it contains bad times. It contains cycles. So in order to meet those cycles in yourself and within your own life, being true to yourself and who you actually are is the way that you meet that. And that's what keeps you having kind of a solid heart and keeps you being in tune and connection with nature. instead of kind of the false reality of like chasing happiness, which we have in our society.
Yeah, and I would say that kind of going back to the forgiveness thing, forgiveness doesn't have anything to do with the other person. You don't have the ability to forgive someone. Forgiveness has to do with yourself. That person can't erase what's been done and what they did. It's there. The universe already recorded it. It's there. It exists. So them acting like they could somehow erase it by, you know, getting you to be like, it's okay, doesn't erase it. It doesn't get rid of it. It exists. It's there. But you can choose to walk around with that emotional poison in your heart by allowing the emotions to linger forever in your life and the emotions surrounding it. So when I say emotional poison, that's because you refuse to let go of the situation. You refuse to move on. And then it becomes emotional poison because you're now allowing the emotions surrounding the situation or your feelings surrounding the situation to poison you. And then that's how it becomes emotional poison. You walk around with poison that you're choosing to drink every day. That person, maybe they've moved on. Maybe that person doesn't even care. Yeah, they might have done horrific things to you or horrific things to people that you care about. But that person probably doesn't think about you at all. And then you're just the one sitting here acting like they care about you, or they're even considering you, or they're even thinking about you, or they even know that they did it. Some people do horrible things and don't even realize they did it. And then you're sitting here and then you're like, oh, I need closure. I need to have a certain conversation with this person. And then that person's like, I'm sorry, who are you? And then that's when you realize the sad reality of the state that you're in. Because then you're like, but I've been waiting like 20 years to have this conversation. The person's like, I'm sorry, I don't even know who you are. And then you're just there, and then you find out you wasted 20 years of your life holding on to something that someone doesn't even care about.
That's why letting go sometimes is the only option, not forgiveness. It's just letting it go in your own heart. And psychology, I think the trauma aspect of psychology keeps people stuck too long because it keeps you replaying and repeating the trauma to try to like get it out of your body somehow. But it's sometimes you literally just have to let it go, take your next step, move on. And it's like not about replaying or staying stuck or seeking some sort of,
Closure.
Validation.
Yeah, because you may never get it from the person. Yeah.
Which is like a lot of the problems we see in the communities of the diaspora or even other indigenous communities who like to go to the UN and like beg for validation. Because at the end of the day, validate us, make us feel good about what you did to us. Like, because end of the day, it's almost like it's almost like if you burned yourself yesterday, but then you remember burning yourself, and then somebody keeps telling you like, yo, you burned yourself. You remember how it felt? Tell me about how it felt. And you're like, it felt like this. And then you go, this is how it felt. And you burn yourself again. That's literally trauma. Like, in a nutshell. Like, people keep on rehearsing or rehashing like the burn. So it's like either you're going to learn from something or you're going to keep holding on to how something made you feel and keep reliving it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to put yourself in those kind of situations.
And people enjoy that.
Exactly.
I found that a lot of people that are in those kind of situations, they enjoy it and they don't let go of it because of how much they enjoy it. And that's why they don't let it go. It's because it becomes comfortable to be in that place and to be in that state.
Comfort zone.
Yeah, it's a comfort zone. But Zobukande, it's the last question, is how will the Kemetic civilization handle the collapse of the modern society? Kebtah. Last question.
That was the answer?
Yeah, that's the answer. Kebtah. How do you determine when a child is bratty or has a blockage? Can they be intertwined? It depends. Some children just need a good old-fashioned ass whooping. And some children do have blockages, but some children just need a good old emotional course correction, and they need that ass whooped day in, day out, morning, noon, and night. And then when they get that ass whooping morning, noon, and night, and that so-called blockage or that emotional problem, it doesn't exist. You think kids in Africa that don't have time to have emotionally indulgent meltdowns are able to just kind of neglect the realities that they have to have in life? No, you get that ass whooped. And then they move on. And then they move on with their life. Yeah, you got the kid that's in there and they're like, I can't talk. Yeah, you're going to get slapped until you figure it out.
I mean,
that's the beauty. That's the beauty, though, because
it sounds extreme.
the difference is, like, even going back to the chem, like being a chem, right? The difference in society and traditional culture is this. Like, you know that you're going to face suffering. Like, you understand that there's a balance. Like, we call it heruset in the initiation. It's like the good and the bad, the dark and the light. You know you're going to face those obscurities. You know you're going to face those trials and those tribulations. But it's like the day-to-day overcoming of those things, like the day-to-day, like reaching a certain goal, then that's what allows you to know that you're even living as a human being on the planet. So you have a certain level of, like, stability within the self, like, which is like what Tuliasa was saying, like, that's like real happiness. So that's the beauty of it. Like, but you know, we just need to learn here in the West to change our mindset. Like, we're way too tied to our emotions.
Yeah.
Like, you're right, we need a little butt whipping sometimes.
Yeah. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Sauce, hot sauce, began in 2007 when a small group of students traveling in West Africa were trying to think of ways to support charitable projects. One of the students traveling happened to be an artisanal hot sauce chef, and right there, Sauce Hot Sauce was born. Since then, Sauce Hot Sauce has prided itself on making exceptional artisan hot sauces with high-quality ingredients to support good causes. We continue to do this with the best and tastiest offering of sauce flavors to date, with a focus on supporting displaced families in the Fata and Gorma region of Burkina Faso with the revenue from our sales.
It sounded like a Red Cross commercial when you did it.
It did. It sounded like a Red Cross commercial. Like you're just waiting for the person to be like, and now, we'd like you to now donate to such and such. Can we get the rapid fire going?
Oh, we didn't even do that.
We didn't do rapid fire, man. Yeah, I know.
I forgot.
Rapid
Yeah, we got to do some rapid fire. Let me unmute the mic of the man.
Is there a lot?
No, it's not a lot.
Okay.
Just
I don't talk a lot. It's y'all that talk a lot. I'll make it fast tonight. So, first up, we got Sports Illustrated called out for using AI to write articles. So, this is from Valuetainment. Sports Illustrated, a major publication in the United States worth about $110 million, was exposed this week for having used AI to write articles and create fake author profiles to go along with them. When contacted about this by Futurism, a science and tech news site, Sports Illustrated deleted all of the articles in question without any explanation. Futurism noticed that none of the authors had social media presence or any history of publishing outside of Sports Illustrated, and there were many of them, according to a source familiar with the matter. The magazine even had a fake AI-generated profile picture to go along with the phony journalists.
Yep, it's happening. That's why you can't find a job right now. You can't find a job because AI is like, I'll do the job, and I'll do it for free.
Actually, you can find a job using the AI.
You can.
You can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you make a resume.
can.
You have to write. Now you have to figure out how to get the AI to work. That's your job.
No, none of this is surprising to me because they're like literally training us to think like robots. So the more and more we use robots for our daily tasks, like writing and entertainment, and the more and more we're just gonna think like robots.
Yeah, you have to become a robot. Like now, it's like you don't get rewarded unless you become a robot. Yeah. Like that's why it's like everything's about compliance. Like computers just comply, man. there's no disobedience.
Now they have jobs where you can train.
Here, take the mic.
Ujai. Now they have jobs where you can train AI. Like you
Like
you
your
get
job
prompts.
is to train the AI.
Yes.
This
You
was
get
the last
prompts to train the AI
what the
how to
last was
think
talking
like a human.
Man, I guess maybe like I should just. Does the laws have any links to these jobs?
It's good money too. I ain't
It's
gonna
good
lie.
money.
I applied for one. I'm not gonna lie.
How much money?
You can make up to like 1,800 like a month.
1,800 a month just giving prompts to the
Yeah.
computer. So you just think of ways to make the computer think,
Yeah.
and then they give you $1,800 a month. How many hours a week do you have to do this?
I mean, it depends on you.
Like 2 hours.
Like 2 hours a week?
2 hours, like an hour a day. You could do
It
it.
depends on how much you want to do it because they have like endless tasks. They make you write like ridiculous stories about like what was it like a.
Yeah,
octopus
like I said, I
what?
applied for
You
one.
did it?
I applied for one, and they wanted me to write a
course you
story
would.
about an octopus
Uh-huh.
who has a PhD in an office singing and dancing. I didn't understand.
It doesn't
Who
sound
wanted you to
human
write this?
to me.
So it probably
The
wasn't. It's
AI?
probably the AI.
So now
Oh.
the AI
So
is
the
the
AI
that's your
is trying
boss?
to- AI
No,
is
it's trying-
employing you.
What I understand is trying to get my creative writing skills to be able to use it for whatever use that they're going to utilize the AI for.
So it's
but this is
AI.
what I did. This is what I did.
Yeah.
I flipped the script on it. I gave the paragraph that the AI wanted me to write, like the description, and I put it in ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT gave me the story. I just put the story back
into ChatGPT.
back into the AI.
back into
But then how do you know that the AI that's hired you for the job is not ChatGPT?
It's not. It's a completely different company. There's so many AIs out there. It's here. It's here.
Yeah, but the thing I don't understand is like, how is it that just I don't know. I just don't get it. Like this.
Look. It's just it's a program. That's all it is. It's
No,
like
I
if you
understand
make
how
an
AI
app.
works. I just don't understand how AI still needs you.
I mean,
because there's certain things that the AI can't recognize.
It's not a person.
It's a computer. Remember, like it was like a caption. They were saying, "Is this like harmful language or something?" Because somebody called themselves like a bad bitch, right? But to us, that's not like harmful language because that's just slang.
So the AI
The AI is like,
recognizes
why are
that
they
as
saying-
why would you say that harmful
Yeah,
language?
yeah.
You gotta also think about it this way. Humans are very contemporary.
Yeah.
We create or seemingly create new things or new ways of doing things all the time. We're not stable. So the AI itself has to keep up with that instability. So it needs people to understand what people are doing now. The same way how what is the CS50 or whatever?
DSM-5.
The DSM-5 it keeps changing.
yeah.
Human beings keep changing in the modern society. So the AI needs to
Yeah,
understand
they're
what are
making
y'all
us
changing
more
to.
and more into robots. That's what's
Right.
happening. If you really want to figure out how to get yourself out of the system, you literally have to deprogram yourself. Like you have to figure out the programs that they've inserted into you. Figure out where they have inserted their conditioning programs and remove, delete, control,
Understand
alt,
your
delete.
AI code.
Technically, the DSM-5 was AI just on paper.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
you became the robot that carried it out.
Yeah.
Right, you
But
became
now there's an actual robot
Uh-huh.
that's gonna carry it out.
So
but
then,
it
like,
needs you to keep
can
up
you-
with the bullshit that you make so that it can carry it out.
Exactly. It's just madness. It's a whole pool of madness.
Yeah, exactly.
I just am like, fine. Like, how do you get money from it? But I'm like, I
Bro.
just don't understand it.
Bro, here's
Yeah.
the thing. It's going the way it's going.
Yeah.
You gotta find a way to make money off of it, period. Because it's just gonna go there. It's gonna go there.
It's funny because I was talking to this old lady and she was telling me, she was like, you know what NIFT is?
Nift?
And I was like, NIFT? She was like, yeah. She was like, my grandson be doing it. And I was like,
You mean
NIFT?
lift?
NIFT. Hold on.
I know
She
where
said
it's
NIFT.
going.
And then she was like, man, she's like, he be making money too. And I'm like, NIFT? I was like, NIFT. And I'm like, no. I'm like, what's that? And she's like, he be making roller coasters that aren't real and then selling them to people.
Oh, NFT.
And I was like,
Like fake
and
roller
then I was like,
coaster.
NFT? And then she was like, yeah. She was like, you need to do that. She's like, you need to make some NFTs. She's like, I've been calling it the wrong thing. I call it the NIF. She was like, but you need to be doing that NFT. She was like, do that NFT. She was like, go make some money. And then I was saying to myself, I was like, man, I was like, you got 13-year-olds out here
Making bread.
making bread.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting here like, man, maybe I do need to start making some NIFs. Like, maybe I do need to start doing this stuff. Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, what are we missing? What are we missing that we're not benefiting from these NIFs?
We're not keeping up with the times.
Yeah, we're not keeping up with the times.
Yeah, get a job at Sports Illustrated.
Get your NIF.
Next up, Virginia house explosion sparks questions of U.S. conspiracy. Have you guys seen that video?
Virginia
House of
house.
Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that
It
house
just
that blew up.
exploded. Exactly.
Yeah, that big,
Randomly?
big
It was a
explosion.
giant explosion
It
in
was
the
a
house of
big
Virginia,
explosion.
right? So the homeowner, 56-year-old James Yu, he's an Asian man. He was said to be a paranoid conspiracy theorist who believed the U.S. government wanted to kill him. The Daily Mail reported. His LinkedIn account, which is now deleted, contains several strange posts. Among them, a post from December 1st claimed his neighbors were spies planning to carry out his assassination. There were several other anti-America posts on his social media. In March 2017, Yu's wife, Stephanie, had filed for divorce, and after that, he started calling her the witch. So, after she won a court ruling and their divorce was finalized months later, James Yu was asked to pay her a sum of $80,000 and asked to buy her out of her share of the home for $150,000, which is the same property that was destroyed in the blast. Authorities said when offers tried to breach the residence forcefully, they
If I
believed
can't get it, no one
they
can.
believed they heard multiple gunshots from inside the home. And then as they failed to locate the source of the gunshots, the police reportedly deployed a non-flammable chemical meant to force James Yu into surrender before the house exploded.
Was he inside?
He was inside the whole time. The cops ended up going there because he was shooting flares out of the window. And then
it was like,
eventually,
gotcha.
when they showed up, like the whole SWAT team and everything had to come because he wouldn't open the doors, he wouldn't pick up the house phone, anything like that.
I don't think he was inside.
And then he blew it up.
Like that guy.
Or did
That
the
guy
witch
sounds like
blow
that
it
guy
up?
sounds
Yeah.
like a man
It's
possessed by revenge.
it's giving me insurance claim vibes.
Yeah, like it's giving me like I'm gonna blow up this house, and then I'm gonna make sure my ex-wife doesn't get it, but I'm not gonna kill myself in the process.
But he reportedly worked for the U.S. government though at some point, like
Maybe it's a setup.
The rabbit
international.
hole
Yeah.
goes deep.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
really
there's
deep.
probably
It's
other
weird.
stuff
The
at play
rabbit
then.
hole.
I mean, maybe all of this is fabricated and none of it is true, and then he just is getting framed. Like,
And they
You
just
know-
blew his house up.
yeah, they
Yes,
blew up his
that's
house
a-
You know,
because
we haven't-
there's something that they needed to get rid of, and then they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
do this and do that.
You know, I noticed we haven't used any bombs yet in this whole show.
Yeah, we
Is
haven't
it-
dropped any bombs.
Have we replaced it yet with the lightning strike?
No, we haven't. Yeah, we need to. Yeah, we need to.
Next
But
week.
we haven't gotten it next week. Yeah, I know. Tias is like, y'all don't feel like I dropped any bombs today? That's
There
what she's
been no
really saying.
explosions here.
Yeah. She's really being like, I didn't get any bombs dropped. Like not one.
You should drop one for her.
Yeah, just the whole point is, I don't have headphones today, so because I don't have headphones, I can't hear the sounds.
Okay.
But yeah, because I saw a comment and someone was like, very insightful episode, the episode we did with Naba,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, but the bomb drops are very, very, distracting. And then I took it to heart. I kind of took it kind of personal.
They called them knowledge bombs.
Oh yeah, knowledge bombs or whatever it was.
Bombs are very
And then I took it so personal that I'm just like, you know what? I hate you for saying that, but whatever. And then like now I'm feeling like the guy that apparently, it blew up the house on behalf of his ex-wife or whatever. Like I'm like not dropping any bombs on like principle of being like I hate you. But yeah. So what's next aside from this poor guy that's getting framed for this?
R.I.P. James U. So next up, we got illegal immigrants serving U.S. military. So during his speech delivered on the Senate floor on Monday, Senator Durbin, this is the guy from Illinois, who just last week blocked a subpoena for deceased sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's flight records.
Allegedly
You said he
deceased.
dropped the subpoena?
He blocked a subpoena.
Blocked. Why are we even talking about this guy?
So that same guy that blocked the subpoena, he lamented the recruitment crisis plaguing the U.S. armed forces. Because as we know, they're trying to like draft people. They're trying to say sorry for if we kicked you out because of COVID and you didn't take the shot. Come back now. It's okay. We didn't really mean it. According to the latest statistics, recruitment numbers across all branches of the military have hit a 50-year low following the botched Afghanistan withdrawal in 2021. Additionally, the Pentagon's multi-million-dollar diversity, equity, and inclusion campaigns, the forced removal of 8,400 service members who rejected the COVID-19 vaccine, and a severe drop-off in the general public's physical and mental fitness have left the military with a recruitment shortfall of nearly 25%. Meanwhile, the largely unattended U.S.-Mexico border has had a daily influx of immigrants from South and Central America and beyond, most of them single males between 18 and 40. These are the guy's words. The presiding officer, my colleague from the state of Illinois, has legislation which addresses one aspect of that. Her bill, and I hope I describe it accurately, says that if you are an undocumented person in this country and you can pass the physical and the required test, background test, and the like, that you can serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you a citizen of the United States. And back in the summer
If
of
you
this
survive.
year, huh?
Right.
If you survive.
If you make
If
it back.
you survive. But back in the summer,
They're out here giving niggas free streaming trial of America.
get a 3 month streaming trial.
You get a 30-day streaming trial.
If you
with
survive
Netflix.
it.
If
And
you
if
survive.
you don't,
Then we'll
Survive.
charge you $12.99. But even back in just the summer of this year, Illinois actually passed a bill to let certain non-citizens become cops. So they could be illegal immigrants. But if you're there already and we catch you,
Because it's
if
like
you pass the physical and pass the test, somehow you're an illegal immigrant. But if you pass the test, you can
because
become
it's like
a cop.
as long as you're in the system, that's all they care about.
no, that's
Nah,
not.
I think it's
what
just a sign
city-
that this
what
is-
city are these cops?
It's Illinois.
Illinois. Where in Illinois? Because I'm
It's
gonna
just
make sure.
the state of Illinois.
I'm gonna make sure I speed in the state of Illinois. Because if I get pulled over by any of those cops, I'm gonna be like, I will call ICE. I know you're an illegal immigrant. Like, don't you step to me talking about I'm speeding. What's the speed limit?
They're gonna be like, I work
Yeah,
for
do
them
you
too.
have
Where
a
you
driver's
from?
license? Huh, Jose? Huh?
I think this is showing the desperation of the system, though. Maybe there's just like people are no longer trying to get involved in whatever bullshit they got going on, like with the wars in Ukraine and Israel and like law enforcement, and now they're just like, look, we need all hands on deck.
Yeah. They're giving illegal immigrant. They're like, seriously? Like that's great. I'm not mad at the illegal immigrants, but I'm just saying, like, bro, at least be honest. If you pull me over and you're an illegal immigrant, don't write me a ticket, bro. Because I'm gonna be like, I'm citizens arresting you,
Like, I'm one
and
of
I'm
you.
calling ICE.
I'm one of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of commentary online about people saying like, how could you possibly think that somebody who left their own country and didn't serve in their own country would come here and serve yours effectively?
Yeah.
Like you would put them in the military and then they would just go chill.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even do it.
Yeah, but then the free trial streaming period is dependent upon how good you do.
That's true. That's true. So next up, since you guys were talking about the drugs and health earlier, CVS pharmacies are cutting out the middleman and making them pay. So, CVS, the largest retail pharmacy chain in the country, is ditching the opaque formulas that currently determine drug prices. Under its new model, CVS pharmacies will be reimbursed by the pharmacy benefit managers. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term before, a PBM. It's basically a third-party seller of the drug that CVS has to buy it from, and then they go and sell it. That reimbursement that they'll be getting from the PBMs will be based on the cost of the drug plus a set markup and fee to cover operations. The model bears a striking resemblance to the one championed by Mark Cuban, the billionaire entrepreneur, via his online pharmacy. Cuban's company buys generic drugs from directly from pharmaceutical companies and sells them straight to patients. The pitch is that cutting out the middlemen and having a transparent pricing model leads to lower costs for consumers. Mark Cuban himself said, "I could make a fortune off of this, but I won't. I've got enough money. I'd rather just fuck up the drug industry in every way possible."
Mark Cuban said
All
that?
in all, this brings to the light the fact that the PBMs have been playing the middleman for centuries and taking big cuts. They pretty much artificially spike prices, emboldened by a lack of transparency in the drug pricing chain without providing any value to the customers.
So now it's finally becoming apparent that Big Pharma is the cartel, is the real cartel. So then you're telling me, like, the way they show it in the cartel movies, oh, up the price, oh, I'm middleman in it, I'm going to do this, and the way that it's done on the street is the way that these pharmaceutical companies function with CVS and Duane Reade and Walgreens. And
Sounds about right.
Interesting. Huh.
It's the criminal justice system.
Yeah, pretty
Law
much.
and Order. Start the Law and Order music.
Next up, journalists are claiming that a Trump dictatorship is inevitable.
Bro, just bring Trump
Trump
back, man.
dictatorship?
Just
Like-
bring Trump
That's what they're
back,
saying.
bro.
Wait, who's saying this?
I was thinking about the economy today, and I'm like, just bring that nigga back, bro. Just bring Trump back.
So Robert Kagan, the husband of Biden Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, wrote a piece in the Washington Post titled, "A Trump Dictatorship is Increasingly Inevitable. We Should Stop Pretending." And quote, "Let's stop the wishful thinking and face the stark reality. There's a clear path to dictatorship in the United States, and it's getting shorter every day." Kagan wrote, he considers it a done deal that Trump will be the Republican nominee, and warned that Trump will have the full backing of a disgruntled population on his side, with even fewer reservations about him seizing power than last time. And quote, indicting Trump for trying to overthrow the government will prove akin to indicting Caesar for crossing the Rubicon, and just as effective. He wrote, like Caesar, Trump wields a clout that transcends the laws and institutions of government based on the unswerving personal loyalty of his army of followers.
Just give it to him, bro. Who cares? Give us the Trump dictatorship. It's better than the Biden dictatorship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, is
At
this a
least they can
liberal
be
writer?
honest
Is
about
this a
it.
liberal?
No, I think
Okay.
he's
It's a Republican.
no, he's Democratic. This is the husband
that's
of Biden
liberal.
deputy
that's a liberal
Deputy
then.
Secretary
Yeah,
of
yeah,
State
yeah.
Victoria Nuland.
Yeah, that's a liberal then.
So it's stirring up fear, right? It's stirring up fear
Pretty much.
about, Trump becoming, Napoleon or whatever.
That's a good
And-
propaganda move.
Right. I mean, that's what they've done to Trump the whole time. Is like it's like take the man and put him into this context where he's like the devil. Like that's what the media did to him the whole first time, and it sounds like it's continuing.
Trump's not that bad.
But I find the comparison that he used to say that, like Caesar, he would be crossing the Rubicon, because all that really meant was that when Caesar crossed a river called the Rubicon into Italy, it was automatic that they would like have a war because he wasn't supposed to cross that line. And now Trump is just doing the same thing. He's crossing that line and saying like, oh, these lines are bullshit. Like, look at what's happening in here.
Yeah.
They're lying to you, and I will help you out of the lie. So
And I mean, just to clarify, like, both parties are just two different hands of the same system. So it's like, you know, that's why he's even saying put Trump back in, because it's like, who
Doesn't
cares
matter.
if this doesn't matter who's in? It's like,
At least it's a little bit better for us. Trump paid us. He was selling us, he was sending us free money, man, every month. He was giving us, he was like, send these niggas $1,000. He was like, COVID's kind of tough on them. He's like, send them each like a couple hundred, like $1,000 or something.
And gas was cheap.
Yeah, gas was cheap.
Word.
Now they're trying to get Biden reelected, so now gas is getting closer to $3 a gallon. I was driving the other day and I was like, gas is around $3. I'm like, gas prices are going down. Because they've been consistently for the past couple of months been going down, and I was just realizing because a couple weeks ago it went down from like $3.30 to like $3, and I'm like, I wonder if it's gonna hit under $3, and then like 10 seconds later I hit a gas station, it was $2.99, and then I was like, someone's trying to get elected. I was like, I smell bullshit. Must be an election here.
All right, next up. This one is a good one. Cosmopolitan magazine promotes satanic abortion ritual. So, so basically Cosmopolitan had posted something on Instagram doing sort of like a step-by-step of how to do this satanic abortion ritual. Now, this is coming from
like
the Satanic Temple.
A spiritual ritual?
I'll get into it. So the mission of the Satanic Temple, a religious organization, is to encourage benevolence and empathy among all people, reject tyrannical authority, advocate practical common sense, oppose injustice, and undertake noble pursuits. Cosmopolitan explained on his Instagram page on November 16th about the process of having a satanic-themed abortion. It specifically addressed a ceremonial service provided at the Samuel Alito's mom's satanic abortion clinic, named as an insult to the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, to basically say, like, his mother didn't have the choice of abortion, and that's why this terrible man is alive. So the post shared a series of slides elaborating on the steps of how to have a ritualized abortion ceremony as prescribed by the Satanic Temple. This includes steps such as staring in one's reflection before taking an abortion pill and saying one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The ritual is later concluded by declaring, "My body, my blood, by my will, it is done." Unlike other abortion pill by male providers like Hey Jane or Hey Buzz, the Satanic Temple is a religion, meaning its patients who don't have to be Satanists themselves are participating in a religious ritual.
That sounds crazy.
It's real. I went on the website, I checked everything out.
Cosmo, that's the magazine.
That's the women's magazine.
Cosmopolitan
where
is
they're
like a
always like
lifestyle.
giving women advice on like,
Exactly.
this is how you can supercharge your vagina.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like it's always like when I was a
Satanic
teenager
young
in high school and I was like trying to like figure out what in middle school, not high school. I was like trying to figure out women. I started reading Cosmo to like figure out women. And then I just came to the conclusion. I was like, women are fucking crazy.
Crazy.
I was like, women are fucking
Yeah,
nuts.
like reading those magazines.
Because
Yeah,
when you listen to when you read the Cosmo magazines, they'll be like, "This is how you supercharge your leg shaving cream for a successful life." And then they have like these confessions that you just like read in the horoscope section. And I would be reading the horoscopes and I'd be like, "This doesn't make any sense." I'd be like, "These women are fucking insane."
Well, it's a specific demographic of kind of women who read those magazines.
But that's how they indoctrinate
But that's
women.
how they get you, bro. That's
You know,
what I'm
I
saying.
remember in seventh grade, so you're what, like, I don't know, 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
In seventh grade, they had a spread of magazines, like subscriptions that they gave to us in school in the library. And they said, which ones do you want to subscribe to? And it was like Teen Magazine. It was like Teen Vogue. It was like
Teen Cosmo, all those things, and they got us super early, and everyone signed up for subscriptions to these magazines, and
It's
they
insane.
indoctrinate you.
Like if you want to understand the like psychosis that modern women are suffering from, go get a Cosmo magazine.
It's true.
Like, and just read it like front to back, and then try and not want to jump in a vat of acid. Like it just proves to you that like just like the psychosis of modern women is insane.
And now it's gone even further,
Yeah,
because
now
now
it's
it's like
getting,
satanic
like, yeah, it's
abortion
getting to
rituals.
the next
It's
level.
like they're not
That's-
even hiding it anymore.
That's even. I'm really wondering, like, where did they even get this ritual? Like, who's advising
It's just
this?
abortion, bro.
But
That's
to
all
look
it
into
is.
a mirror and then
You're
the
like my blood, my
what?
body.
Are you,
I mean,
that's
justifiably, that's just new age spirituality
Yeah.
using religion.
But then now it's just
against
like you're
religion.
now instead of it, because I mean, New Age spirituality is all about like, yeah, my body, my choice, all that kind
Exactly.
of stuff, yada yada yada. So yeah, of course, it just now it just they're adding the weird looking in the mirror chant.
It's
Well,
nuts.
other than that, it sounds like a normal feminist movement to me. Sounds like another article you find in Cosmo.
All right. Next up, we're going back to Israel again.
Oh god.
So Israel and U.S. are now at odds over conflicting visions for post-war Gaza. Israel's
You
Prime
don't
Minister,
say.
Mr. Netanyahu, this week announced that Israel would retain an open-ended security presence in Gaza. Israeli officials talk of imposing a buffer zone to keep Palestinians away from the Israeli border. They rule out any role for the Palestinian Authority, which was ousted from Gaza by Hamas in 2007, but governs semi-autonomous areas of the West Bank. The United States has laid out a much different vision. Top officials have said that they will not allow Israel to reoccupy Gaza or further shrink its already small territory.
Who said that?
That was U.S. officials.
Uh-huh.
They have reportedly called for a return of the internationally recognized Palestinian Authority and the resumption of peace talks aimed at establishing a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Over the weekend, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said it's critical that Israel protect Gaza's civilians. And, quote, "If you drive them into the arms of an enemy, you replace a tactical victory with a strategic defeat. So I have repeatedly made clear to Israel's leaders that protecting civilians in Gaza is both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative."
So, I'm really trying to understand, like, how, like, what's going to come next out of this, right? And what I'm thinking is that, like, if Trump gets elected, and it's looking like he's going to,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's when I think there's just going to be an all-out assault on Israel by certain other countries. And then I think Trump's just going to be like, well, gotta go. And then he's just going to be like, sucks to be you, Israel. And just kind of leave him out in the open because he's going to be like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Because, I mean, at this point now, they're just, like, showing how dumb they are. Like, based on what they're trying to do. Because they're basically like, no, we're not giving it back. And they're showing that all they've wanted to do was, they've never wanted a two-state solution to begin with. They've wanted it all for themselves. Sounds like set.
conquering territory.
All right. Last rapid fire topic, and then I have something special for you guys.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yay.
Burkina Faso officially no longer recognizes French to be an official language.
Wow.
In,
Wow.
in Burkina Faso, the traditional regime led by Ibrahim Traoré has adopted a bill revising the constitution, giving preference to national languages and demoting French to the status of a working language. This reform follows a similar trend seen earlier this year in Mali, where French was also relegated through a constitutional referendum.
Yep. I mean, yeah, when we go to Burkina Faso, people speak French just to communicate the basics, but people speak their traditional languages, you know.
I don't know if you heard me. Fuck you, France. Anyone else have anything to add? If not, fuck you,
I
France.
still like croissants though.
I don't understand the hype with croissants, man.
If there's anything good from the French, it's croissants.
That's like
I
when
mean, they're
they...
good.
A buttered croissant
Mm,
with some eggs.
I
You get
mean-
some onions and some tomatoes and some peppers
man,
and fry them up
croissants
with some
always leave
eggs.
something to be
What about
desired, bro.
Crepes. Crepes.
Crepe.
Crepe? Nah, not so much crepes, but
They kind of... Is that French?
Yeah, I think
Crepe?
yeah,
That
it
is?
sounds French.
Shawnee's like, yes. You imbeciles.
so. I don't know. If their only contribution is food, I don't know if that's like.
Well, let's not go too far because I have a big bone to pick with France specifically in cuisine. Because when I went to culinary school and then, like the stuff that they were trying to show me to make, and I was just sitting there in my mind, I'm like, this is food. This is like the
Yeah,
standard
yeah.
of cooking.
Yeah.
Like this.
It's French food?
Yeah,
It's French
cuisine.
food. Like French cuisine is like the basis of culinary schools. It's
Wow.
French cuisine. So I'm
Why?
like, this is I don't.
French food is trash.
But it's the basic stand. Am I wrong?
But
It's
What'd you
true.
say?
It's true. It's true.
But the thing... What,
Yeah,
the
like
ridiculous
that's
outfit?
It's a
The
chef.
chef hat, the
That's a French-
the fancy
that's just
cuisine,
colonization at its finest.
culinary.
You ain't never
it's
seen
France.
Ratatouille, son?
No, someone told me one time I cook like ratatouille, and now I was like, I don't even understand what that means because I've never seen that.
It's a mouse who cooks food in a kitchen.
Yeah, but I didn't understand the correlation between me cooking like ratatouille.
What were you making, like something with cheese
I
and
don't know,
milk?
bro. I
Probably,
don't remember.
probably
It
making
was,
cheese
but
and
the
milk.
person that said that is like a fucking retard. So then I never took it serious. I was just like, are you just like retarded, and then you're just associating like me cooking with the movie Ratatouille because it's the only basis you have for someone cooking, you idiot?
I don't know. I don't know what was going on in that person's head. But the main point
That
is
person's an idiot.
croissants, buttered croissants, are the best thing the French have ever
I don't
given.
know. Croissants
That's
suck,
that's
bro.
all I'm saying.
They leave so much to be desired.
No, you're not
They're like
eating them
crappy
right.
bread, bro.
Nah, but you gotta eat them with like stuff you would
No.
eat.
No.
Yes.
Like croissants, that's what I'm saying. Croissants suck.
No.
Like it's just not something
disagree.
I
I
go
disagree.
pick out. But
I've made sandwiches with buttered croissants that were amazing.
You made what?
Sandwiches with buttered croissants that
Like
were
what?
amazing. I just told you.
I mean-
you get onions.
That's an egg sandwich, bro.
Right, but the way I do it is
can we
amazing.
move on?
Whatever,
Stop.
bro.
Can we?
Yeah, look, the way you guys feel about French
butter
cuisine and it
croissant.
being the basis for culinary schools.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not saying it should be.
It shouldn't be.
No, I know. What I'm saying is this: is that's the way I feel about Shakespeare
In
in
acting
the acting
school.
world. Is that like Shakespeare is
Yeah.
is like the threshold,
Mhm.
but that's just because he's a white writer.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, yes, of course, Shakespeare. Can you do the bard's language? And if you can't, you're not a real actor. And then that's the problem, is that I'm like, man, fuck you and fuck Shakespeare. And then people are like, why? And I'm like, because it's a waste of time. And I'm not about to be up here memorizing all of this shit
But it's the standard.
just to say this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the standard. It's just
But
like,
yeah, I get it.
It's
It's
just
a
like
standard.
cooking
It's a
with
standard
French
for white
cooking.
people. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
it's a white dominated space.
Would you like creme brulee?
Creme brulee is great though.
I don't like creme brulee.
Creme brulee is great.
Yeah.
Creme brulee is great. I mean, hey,
All right.
I'll choose a
Everyone
croissant.
is hungry,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
it's the fasting season.
But speaking of your hunger, right? I thought that it would be nice today to end the show in a way that speaks to our culture. So I have a proverb, and I would like some response to it. This is from the 423 Divination. You can find it on riseandfirefly.com.
Nice.
And go to the small tab up at the top that says Annual Divination. So the proverb, this is a continuation of a sentence, but as we know as initiates, sometimes the phrases can be very long. But this part says, and you must have cohesion. With cohesion, even if you are hungry, you don't feel the hunger. Even if you struggle, you won't feel the struggle. What do you guys think about that?
You guys want to take a stab at it, or you want me to go?
I mean, I
She can.
have a little. I mean, I have a little insight on the proverb. Just because, we've talked about it, and I've gotten some insight from some of my teachers, but cohesion is that interesting concept that we always jump to and assume that it means like always about us and other people. But cohesion first at its core has to come from within ourselves. So like if we're cohesive within ourselves, that's what we've been talking about this whole podcast. It, like, if people haven't really noticed that the whole reason we're so out of whack as a society and as a people with all this mental illness is we have a complete lack of cohesion within ourselves. Our spirits are separated from our bodies. Our, you know, bodies are separated from our hearts and our minds. And, you know, we're just spiritually out of whack. If we can bring that cohesion back into the body, if we can bring that cohesion back into like who we are within ourselves, that's ultimate healing, that kind of cohesiveness. And then the cohesiveness spreads outward to other people. Then you can actually be cohesive as a group, as a community, as a family, you know, of like-minded people when you have that cohesion within. And then, yeah, you're never hungry. Like, you have someone to your left, someone to your right, someone in front, someone behind, that are everyone's cohesive within themselves and cohesive within the group.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, it's funny because this is like it's been my main meditation this entire like fasting period. And it's like, you know, human beings are not just this physical body that you see. We're also like a spirit. We also come with a soul. We also come with a brain. We have a heart. We're an amalgamation of many different things. So us being an amalgamation of many different things, you kind of have to learn to have kind of like a unity with all of those things. Because even like your own spirit, like we talk about deja vu a lot, like your own spirit will already like perceive things. You will see things to the point where you end up in situations where it's like, this might feel familiar. I might have seen this, but it's the kind of like cohesion or the stability, because that's really what it is. Stability you have within yourself internally with all of the things that you are. That stability you have in yourself is what's going to give you like the stability in your life period. Because if you can be stable with your emotions, as Tiasto was saying, with your feelings, with your spirit, with your mind, with your heart, all of these things can be like unified towards like one specific goal, with the goal of like really survival, the goal of really like trying to like fit into something and like evolve towards something. Then what ends up happening is you tend to start to see that things around you start to shift. It's like most of the time our environment, we might say our environment really influences us, but we fail to realize how we also can have an influence on that environment. But if you don't have like a stability within yourself, then everything around you will be unstable. And it's like, that's the cohesiveness. You have to find the stability within yourself, because that stability within yourself is what leads you to the stability outwards. And that could be, I don't know, for some people it could be financially, it could be emotionally, mentally, could be with a partner, could be with a group of people, as Tiasto was saying. But it all starts with yourself first. If you want to change anything, you can't unless you change like yourself first. And changing yourself has to start with how you're actually holding yourself together, how you're actually being stable within your own self first. But that's been my meditations.
It wasn't this trip. It was a trip before this that, so it wasn't this year. It was in the trip of 421, right?
Yeah.
Like we're in 423 right now. And then 422, there wasn't a trip. But it was a trip of 421 where everything that came out of every temple we went to, it was about cohesion. And everyone thought cohesion had to do with everyone holding hands and singing Kumbaya. And that's complete and utter bullshit, because it has nothing to do with your ability to get along with other people, and it has everything to do with you having a cohesiveness between all aspects of yourself, and everything that's considered your composition, which means that there's no schism between your spirit and your mind and your heart and your name and your soul and everything else that includes you, meaning your ancestors, things that your ancestors had agreements with, meaning like you don't have a problem in that composition at all, between all of those things coming together and working together for you to be a complete, cohesive human being. And that gets lost in translation, and a lot of people don't think about that, and a lot of people don't, kind of take that into consideration. And this is the thing, is cohesiveness, I think the way they put it, and you must have cohesion. With cohesion, even if you are hungry, you don't feel the hunger. Even if you struggle, you won't feel the struggle. I've never heard a better way of putting cohesion, because when you truly are kind of firing on all cylinders, because that's what cohesion is. Cohesion is the ability to fire on all cylinders across, every dimension, across everything that composes who you are. It's the ability to just be completely locked in and focused, and for there to be that harmony and balance between every aspect of yourself. And when you truly have that, then it's like food becomes almost like second nature. Then even the way you kind of view a struggle becomes like something you don't even really take into consideration as a struggle. It's just kind of like the thing that's in front of you, that you're just like, it doesn't matter what's in front of me, I'm going to handle it and I'm going to do it. And then you have a kind of relentlessness or a kind of ruthlessness in terms of approaching every situation that's placed in front of you. And that's not considered all the time. That type of cohesion is never considered. Cohesion is considered in a way where it's your ability to get along with people around you. But the problem is that your inability to get along with somebody around you has to deal with the fact that you have something in you that's not getting along with something else inside of you. And it doesn't have to do with the other person. So as long as the person always becomes the focus, then you truly will never get along with anyone else. There never will be that externalized, projection of what you claim to be cohesion is. It's just not going to work, and it's not going to exist until you find that within you. And with that being said, it's been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we hope you guys continue to tune in. It's always a pleasure. It's always an honor to be here in front of you guys and to have this platform to talk to you guys. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can get involved. We're having a forum next Saturday. It is a membership forum for all of those that are members of the Earth Center. Please tune in. Please check it out. There's a lot of different things that are going on. A lot of different projects you can get involved with, a lot of different things you can find out about the Earth Center and that you can lend your energies to, even if you just want to donate, even if you just want to do this. Check out our merch, Kebtah-nj.org. Buy some, support it, cop it, rock it, you know what I'm saying? Or buy it for somebody else. It's the Christmas season. I know some of you Hoteps is trying to stun on some of the other people that still celebrate holidays. So buy them some, some real comedic merch. Kebtah-nj.org. Check it out. risingfirefly.org. Buy them a book. Bestow upon them some knowledge. Get them a calendar. Be like Nas. Kick them some knowledge. Give them some koofies. You name it. Whatever it is. Check us out. We'll get back with you guys next week. See you guys next week. Idiadu.
Idiaru.
Idiaru.